Chapter 802. Yi Nanshan's face turned pale. He stood there in a daze and looked at Li Junsheng. He had never thought that one day he would be criticized so mercilessly by a junior. He saw Yizhen standing behind Li Junsheng, as if he had finally found a reason for himself. I'm not qualified. I'm her father. You're her father? Li Junsheng seemed to have heard a joke. A father who sued her in court? A father who doesn't care about his daughter at all? The ridicule in his eyes was too obvious. Yi Nanshan's face was very ugly. That's because she was unfilial first. If I have a father like you, then I don't mind being unfilial. He refused to come to his senses. Li Junsheng didn't want to talk to Yi Nanshan at all. Mr. Yi, if there's nothing else, please leave. This is my fiancé's office. And she obviously doesn't want to see you. Mayor Li, I know you're a high-ranking official, but that doesn't mean you have the right to interfere in other people's private affairs. Let's not talk about the fact that Yizhen hasn't married you yet. I still have a share in this company. Why can't I stand here? You are indeed qualified. Li Junsheng answered on behalf of Yizhen, you can continue to stay, but Miss Yi said that she has evidence of me. I don't think we should let this matter go so easily. We have to investigate it thoroughly, right? Mr. Yi. Or do you want me to call you now? Chen Wan gritted her teeth so hard that they almost shattered. She couldn't help but take a few steps forward, wanting to argue with Li Junsheng. Yi Ningen held her hand and then Yi Nanshan's hand. Dad, Mom. Let's go first. Li Junsheng came out, which meant that he was fine. Then, what to do next would have to be discussed again. At this stage, the most important thing was to deal with the agreement in Yizhen's hands. Yi Nanshan didn't want to leave. He hadn't gotten the agreement back. However, he also knew that Li Junsheng was here. Just now, they had given Li Junsheng a hold on them. Now was not the time to use brute force, he could only look for another opportunity. After exiting the shogi company, Chen Wan almost exploded as soon as she went downstairs. Yi Nanshan, you're really good. You actually dared to sign such an agreement. Is everything okay now? You want to give all your wealth to someone else? You're really something. Chen Wan had said the same thing the day before after she found out about the agreement. Now that she mentioned it again, Yi Nanshan was very impatient. He didn't want to listen at all. Chen Wan felt that it wasn't enough. You've contributed to the company for so many years. Why should you give all your shares to that little girl? What qualifications did she have? Are you out of your mind? Yes. Dad, you're too impulsive. Enough. Yi Nanshan didn't want to listen anymore. What else is there to say? What's the point of repeating it over and over? Boring. Then why don't you take back the agreement? Chen Wan was furious. In my opinion, you still love that dead woman. Otherwise, why would they sign such an agreement? In vain, I suffered so many grievances in order to follow you. Now that things are better, I don't even have a way to live. Forget about me. But what did Ning Han do wrong? What did Jian Hao do wrong? Where did you put them? Huh? Tell me, tell me. She pushed Yi Nanshan as she spoke. Yi Nanshan was already impatient. He couldn't take it anymore and waved her hand away. Chen Wan, who was wearing high heels, was caught off guard. She took 2 steps back and lost her balance, falling on the stairs. She screamed and immediately jumped up. Yi Nanshan, how dare you push me? How dare you push me? You ungrateful bastard. You, enough. Yi Nanshan looked at her shrewish behavior and then at the people passing by looking at them from time to time. You've made enough noise. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Chen Wan also came to at this moment and stood up angrily. The 3 of them lowered their heads and quickly got into Yi Nanshan's car. Yi Nanshan sat in the car, not in a hurry to start it. Deep down, he was very depressed. He thought back to the time when he had to sign the agreement in order to make Lu Hui trust him. After all, he really needed Lu Hui's ability and connections back then. Lu Manjiang was a professor in the Lu family. The Lu family had a lot of connections that he usually couldn't reach. Although he had signed the agreement, he was absolutely unwilling to hand over the shares in his hands to others. Why? Lu Hui had been dead for so long. The company had grown because of his hard work. When Yi Nanshan thought about this, he didn't think that without Lu Hui's hard work and connections, who would know that he came from a small county? What do you think we should do? You don't want me to make a fuss. What do you think we should do? Chen Wan couldn't calm down. Yi Nanshan became more and more impatient. Even if we take away the shares, I still have a lot of money under my name. I won't starve you to death. If you don't like me, we can divorce. You can go find another man. Okay, Yi Nanshan, what are you talking about? Let me tell you, you want to get rid of me? No way. Dad. Mom. Stop arguing. Yi Ningen was already annoyed. Now that they were arguing, she was even more annoyed. If you have time to argue here, why don't you think about how to destroy the agreement or how to keep our shares? Previously, she had wanted to say that Lu Hui was unconscious before she died and take all of Yizhen's shares. But now, it seemed that it would be difficult to keep Yi Nanshan's shares, let alone Yizhen's shares. What was even more hateful was that damn Yizhen had hooked up with a good man like Li Junsheng. Yizhen had taken advantage of all the good things. It was really enough. How do we solve it? How? Chen Wan glared at Yi Nanshan with dissatisfaction. If your dad hadn't been in a daze and signed that agreement, how could there be so many problems after that? Mom. Stop talking, okay? Yizhen saw that Yi Nanshan was on the verge of exploding and quickly stopped her from continuing. Stop talking. Dad is already suffering enough. I said, the most important thing now is to solve the problem. Yi Nanshan looked at his daughter and finally felt a little more considerate. He thought for a moment and said, let's go find Lawyer Ding first and talk to him about this. Let's see what he has to say. Dad, that's what I mean too. Yi Ningen was actually very annoyed, but she knew that at times like this, she had to be even more calm. Let's go find Lawyer Ding first. It's best if we can find an explanation that the agreement is invalid. As for the rest, we'll talk about it later. Okay. Ningen is still the sensible one. Yi Nanshan's words attracted Chen Wan's attention, but when she thought that her daughter was more likable to Yi Nanshan than that little B**tch, Yi Zhen, she more or less relaxed. In the office, Yi Zhen looked at Li Junsheng. Her eyes were curved and there was a faint smile on her face. Uncle Li, aren't you going to work today? No. Li Junsheng hugged her waist and led the two of them to sit in the spacious office chair. I was just wronged and I'm depressed. I need some time to calm down. Pfft, Yizhen couldn't help but laugh out loud. Uncle Li, are you kidding me? She had known him for a long time, so she could roughly guess his personality. Things like being depressed weren't suitable for him at all. Uncle Li, you're so depressed, yet you still have time to come here to watch my family ethics drama? You don't know, do you? Li Junsheng leaned over and kissed her red lips. It's because I'm depressed, so I came here to find comfort. As he spoke, his hand naughtily reached into the hem of her clothes. Yizhen panicked and quickly grabbed his hand. Stop fooling around. This is the office. I know. Li Junsheng's lips curled up, and this smile unexpectedly revealed a bit of evil. Of course I know this is the office. However, I haven't tried doing it in the office. You're crazy. No, I just can't help it. Li Junsheng's lips were close to her ear. You know, if it's my office, I naturally can't mess around, but it should be fine here. Uncle Li, Yizhen wanted to refuse, but looking at Li Junsheng, the emotions in his eyes were too obvious. She blushed a little. Thinking that he had just come out, she didn't refuse too thoroughly, but she still had to have a bottom line. There's a lounge next to it, this was the bottom line. If she really did it here, she would have a shadow in the future. Li Junxing knew that she was thin-skinned, so he didn't force her. There would always be a chance in the future. He picked her up and strode to the lounge. Of course, he didn't forget to lock the door. Yizhen didn't forget to ask Chu Tei to push the meeting to the afternoon. When she hung up, she was still a little embarrassed. Was this considered depravity? The bed in the lounge was changed by Yizhen after she became the chairman. She really didn't want to use something that Yi Nanshan had used. The bedding had also been changed from white to light blue. At this moment, she was naked, and the sky blue blanket barely covered half of her waist. Her entire body exuded a lazy and sexy vibe. Li Junxing looked at her kitten-like appearance and loved her very much. He picked up her hand and kissed it. One more time? No. Yizhen shook her head and sat up. Looking at the marks on her body, she blushed a little. There's still a meeting in the afternoon. There's still a lot of work to deal with. She turned around and looked at Li Junxing, who had stood up at the same time. She suddenly became serious. Uncle Li, has your matter really been resolved? Are you all right? Worried about me? Li Junxing reached out to hug her, but he saw that she quickly got out of bed and grabbed the clothes beside her to put them on. Don't worry, I'm fine. What exactly happened? How did Yi Ningen have your evidence? She did have evidence, but it was made up by herself. Li Junxing thought of what had happened before, and his expression was a little cold. Chapter 803. After all, such a big thing has happened. The higher-ups will definitely investigate it thoroughly. After receiving the report, they will naturally call me for questioning. Yi Ningen didn't just report Li Junxing. No one knew what she was thinking, but she actually got someone to bribe the family of a senior management member in the factory. She got that person to agree to testify that he had given Li Junxing a gift. That person's words were very convincing, and there was evidence. Yizhen frowned and couldn't help but ask, then why are you fine? I can only say that whether it's your parents or your sister, they don't know me well. Ever since Li Junxing could remember, he had been educated by his father and grandfather. He had wanted to walk down this path. He knew very well that even if you took a wrong step on this path, it would be a big taboo. Therefore, from the moment he started working at his first unit, he had been very careful about his image and had never left any evidence for himself. If the family of the management wanted to accuse him, they had to have evidence. When did he give the gift? Where did he give it? What did he give it? Was it right? Secretary Chen kept a record of his daily routine. How could it be designed by someone as clumsy as Yi Ningen? It's good that you're fine. Yizhen had already put on her clothes. But, since you know it was Yi Ningen who did it, why didn't you get someone to arrest her? If this was in ancient times, it would be slandering an official of the imperial court and he would be beaten. Your sister has some brains. She didn't show up from beginning to end. Li Junxing had thought that it was because he had stopped another company from opening a factory in Qing City last time and attracted the family's revenge. After all, at his position, there were many people who wanted to step on him. If he hadn't heard from Yizhen that Yi Ningen had evidence in her hands, he would have asked Secretary Chen to investigate who was stirring up trouble behind the scenes. Then we can't do anything to her? Why did Yizhen feel so unhappy? How could that be? Li Junxing grabbed her hand and pulled her back to the bed to sit down. There are many ways to deal with your sister. The simplest way is for me to help you snatch the shares from your father. Losing the shares of the shogi company means losing the identity of the eldest daughter of the Yi family. To your sister, that's the biggest punishment. That was true. Yi Ningen may have been too unhappy in the past 10 years. Ever since she followed Chen Wan and married into the Yi family, she went around proclaiming that she was the eldest daughter of the Yi family. She was really shameless. She didn't even think about it. Her mother was at most a mistress, and her identity on the surface was to follow the mistress into the Yi family. Her surname was originally Chen, but she later changed it to Yi. This was the greatest humiliation for Yi Ningen. Maybe people care more about something when they have nothing. Why does Yi Ningen hate her so much? Most of the reason was because he felt that if it wasn't for her, he would be the legitimate eldest miss of the Yi family. The mother and daughter were disgusted. They didn't even think about it. If it wasn't for Lu Hui, the shogi company wouldn't even exist. How could they be the eldest daughter of the Yi family? Uncle Li, don't worry. I will get all of Yi Nanshan's shares. Chapter 804. Then let them come. I'm not afraid. Yi Zhen was really not afraid. If it were before, she might have been a little nervous. However, ever since she got together with Li Junxing, she had a lot more confidence than before. She always felt that no matter what happened, Li Junxing would stand behind her. It's better to be careful. To be able to come up with such a vicious trick to frame him, he would probably come up with an even more vicious way to deal with Yi Zhen in the future. From the looks of it, should he hire 2 more people to protect Yi Zhen? He had this thought in his heart, but he also knew that Yi Zhen would probably not agree. He had spent a lot of effort to persuade her to bring Zhao Li along. As expected, as soon as he mentioned it, Yi Zhen objected. It's not that exaggerated. I don't believe they dare to do anything in broad daylight. It's better to be safe than sorry. Li Junxing squeezed her palm. Safety comes first. Uncle Li, don't worry. If the matter of reporting Yi Nanshan really comes to fruition, if he can really leave the family without any money, what will Yi Ningen do bad things with? Yi Zhen was still very optimistic. The heavens were watching what people did. There was a cost to doing bad things. Back then, Yi Nanshan thought that he could coax Lu Hui to work for him by signing an agreement. However, he didn't know that many years later, that agreement could also ruin his reputation and make him lose everything. Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen and didn't remind this innocent little girl. Some people's viciousness was deep in their bones. Just look at the fact that Yi Nanshan was willing to sign the agreement back then. In order to stabilize Lu Hui, he had endured for so many years. It could be seen that this person was definitely not what he appeared to be. The little girl was still too inexperienced and lacked some understanding of human nature. In less than a minute, several possible methods that Yi Nanshan might have flashed through his mind, as well as what Chen Wan and her mother might have done. He hugged his little girl tightly and didn't remind her. He would protect her anyway. He wouldn't let others hurt her. It would be good if she could really learn a lesson. It would save her the trouble of trusting others too much in the future. It would not be good for her. He hoped that his little girl could always be innocent, but he also hoped that his little girl could be a little scheming and learn to protect herself. This was the first time he had such complicated emotions. Now that he thought about it, it really made him feel very subtle. Although it was already late autumn, this small room was very warm. Being hugged by him, Yi Zhen couldn't take it anymore. Hot. Moving away from his embrace, Yi Zhen patted her slightly red little face. All right, I really have to go, or else I'll have to work overtime today. Do you need my help? No need. Yi Zhen turned around to open the door to the lounge. Suddenly, he paused and said, by the way, come with me to Grandpa's house after work. What do you mean, En? If you bring that agreement to my grandpa's house today and let him be the plaintiff, my grandpa will definitely suspect our relationship. Since he already suspects it, let him know. As Yi Zhen spoke, his voice became softer. The two of them were so close now, but grandpa still didn't know. If I go tonight, my grandfather will probably talk about it for a long time. Don't worry, your grandfather must be very satisfied with me. What a big face. Yi Zhen's eyes were filled with obvious mockery. She squinted at him. Maybe my grandfather thinks that you're too old for me. Li Junxing narrowed his eyes, and a dangerous light flashed in them. I'm too old? Isn't that so? Yi Zhen raised her voice. There's a generation gap when you're 3 years old. There's a generation gap between us. If it's not because you're too old, then what is it? Li Junxing got up from the bed. Ignoring the fact that he wasn't dressed yet, he walked directly in front of Yizhen. I'm too old. He pinched her hand that was pulling the door open and locked it with his other hand. He successfully pressed her against the door. His weak-colored chest was right in front of her. Yizhen's legs, which had been weak just now, suddenly felt that she couldn't stand still anymore. It looks like Zhenjin isn't satisfied with my performance just now. No. Yizhen's legs were still weak. Her body was tightly pressed against the door, and her head was shaking like a rattle drum. Are you sure? Li Junxing's body moved forward, and Yizhen was so suppressed that she couldn't move. Why do I feel like you're doubting my ability? Since that's the case, I naturally have to prove it to you. Uncle Li, control yourself. Yizhen cleared her throat. Her voice was trembling. From a health point of view, there's only a future if you control yourself. Li Junxing's expression became more and more interesting. So, you're really worried that I won't be able to give you happiness in the future? No. Yizhen was scared to death. She was only thinking about how to escape. The phone in Li Junxing's pocket rang. Yizhen made use of this time to push him and quickly ran out. Li Junxing looked at her fleeing figure and shook his head helplessly and dotingly. When he took out his phone and saw the phone number on it, his face darkened. Not many people in the company knew about the confrontation between Yizhen and Yi Nanshan. However, everyone saw that Yi Nanshan's family of 3 came looking for them angrily, but left with even more ugly expressions. This situation was clearly like a signal, letting others know that Yizhen and Yi Nanshan should have won between Yizhen and Yi Nanshan. As a result, during the afternoon meeting, the department managers who had been promoted by Yi Nanshan did not dare to speak out against Yizhen. Yizhen was very satisfied with this change. Although she wasn't afraid of people stirring up trouble, she hoped that the people in the company could work together. However, she was in a good mood. When she got into the car, the corners of her lips were still curled up. What's wrong? Are you in a good mood? Li Junxing put on his clothes and returned to his beast in human clothing appearance. Yizhen's back was slightly sore, but she didn't want to argue with him. Not bad. Is there anything good? There is. There were 2 pending plans that had already been finalized. We should be able to sign the contract in 2 days. Just this? Yes. Yizhen nodded. Since I snatched the position of chairman, of course I hope that I can perform well. Otherwise, won't those people laugh at me? I believe in you. Li Junxing's words made Yizhen raise the corners of her lips. She moved her face closer to him. Uncle Li, I thank you for your trust. However, you should think about how to make my grandfather accept you. Then what will you do if your grandfather doesn't accept me? Yizhen bit her lip and her face turned bitter. Relationships without the blessings of family members won't be happy. Since my grandfather doesn't accept you, then I can only cut off my love. I'll cut all ties with you. As soon as she said this, Li Junxing pinched her face. Yizhen felt the pain and looked at Li Junxing with some resentment. He hugged her waist, and the distance between the two of them was less than 5 centimeters. Yizhen, let me tell you, even if the whole world opposes us being together, don't even think about cutting all ties with me. He had always been gentle. Yizhen was a little stunned when he suddenly put on such a cold and serious face. She just stared at him blankly. Did you hear me? Li Junxing pinched her palm hard. Yizhen bit her lip and had no choice but to nod. I heard you. Be good. Li Junxing kissed the corner of her lips before sitting back in his seat. Yizhen pursed her lips and looked at Li Junxing. Did he treat her like a child? He was really too much. However, why was there an inexplicable sweetness in her heart? After Lu Manjiang found out about Li Junxing's intentions this morning, he was very grateful. He and Lu Zhishuan had indeed neglected this point before. If Yizhen went to sue Yi Nanshan, it would inevitably cause gossip. Even if Yi Nanshan was in the wrong, Yizhen would still have to deal with those big shots and bosses in the business world in the future. It was definitely not good to really bear the reputation of a daughter suing her father. At that time, Lu Manjiang only cared about thanking Li Junxing for his reminder. However, after Li Junxing left, he suddenly came to a realization. What was going on? The agreement was clearly given to Yi Zhen. Why was it in Li Junxing's hands? Also, as the mayor of a city, why did Li Junxing suddenly care so much about Yi Zhen? He wanted to wait for Lu Zhishuan to come home at night to talk to him. As a junior about the same age as Yi Zhen, it was more appropriate for him to ask. Unexpectedly, Yi Zhen and Li Junxing came. Grandfather. Uncle Lu. Lu Manjiang looked at Li Junxing, who appeared with his granddaughter, and couldn't figure out what he meant. Jinjin, you're here? His gaze fell on the two of them holding hands. The suspicions that still existed during the day were now confirmed. Lu Manjiang's expression suddenly became very subtle. He looked at the faces of the two people, hoping that things weren't what he thought. Jinjin, you and Mayor Li, you Uncle Lu, I'm dating Jinjin. Li Junxing pinched Yi Zhen's palm to not make her too nervous. I'm sorry. I came and left in a hurry this morning and didn't tell you. It's my fault. He first took the responsibility on himself. Yi Zhen was a little moved. She glanced at Li Junxing and felt that this man was really good in every way. Wait. Lu Manjiang was old and couldn't take the stimulation. You said that you're dating Jinjin? Yes. Do you know what you're talking about? Lu Manjiang looked at him. He actually admired Li Junxing very much. He had come to the house a few times before. He did things reasonably and his words were watertight. However, Lu Manjiang never thought that one day, this person would be with his granddaughter. You're dating Jinjin? Yes. Do you know that you're Jinjin's elder? Lu Manjiang suddenly couldn't accept it. Just now, he was still calling him Uncle Lu. How did he turn around and seduce his granddaughter? Uncle Lu. Li Junxing suddenly smiled. We're not really uncle and nephew. I don't think this is a big problem. That was right, but Lu Manjiang was still unhappy. You're so much older than Jinjin. Even if we're not really uncle and nephew, it's not okay. Not much older. She's only 11 years older. Only 11 years old? How could he say that? Lu Manjiang was furious. He turned his face to look at Yi Zhen. Jinjin, are you really with her? Grandpa. Yi Zhen was confused by Lu Manjiang's reaction. She remembered that Grandpa still admired Li Junxing before. Yes, we've been together for a long time. Then, the last time you brought him back, it wasn't a coincidence, and he didn't ask you to help, right? When Li Junxing sent Yi Zhen back last time, Yi Zhen only said that they met by chance, and then Li Junxing helped her, so she went to help Li Junxing. She didn't expect the two of them to really be together. Lu Manjiang looked at Yi Zhen. He couldn't believe that she was actually with Li Junxing. Do you know who he is? Do you know how old he is? Do you know what he does? You're with him? Grandpa, I've grown up. I know what I'm doing. How did you know? Lu Manjiang looked at his granddaughter and couldn't accept it. He's your uncle. Also, he's so much older than you. Grandpa. Yi Zhen was a little helpless. How is he my uncle? My dad doesn't have brothers. Also, it's true that he's older than me, but not by much. What's more, what does love have to do with age? Lu Manjiang was speechless. Yi Zhen added, didn't you admire Uncle Li before? See, you also know that you call him Uncle Li. Lu Manjiang pointed at Yi Zhen, the expression on his face very interesting. I admire him because he's qualified to be the mayor. But such a person isn't a suitable husband. Why isn't he suitable? Anyway, he's not suitable. Lu Manjiang admitted that Li Junxing was a qualified official, but to be a qualified husband, he felt that it was not enough. Uncle Lu, do you have some misunderstanding about me? Li Junxing spoke at the right time. Before Yijin could speak, he pinched her palm and signaled her to stop talking. His expression was magnanimous as he looked directly at Lu Manjiang. Compared to Jinjin, there's indeed a big difference between my profession and my age. But I don't think this will affect our relationship. I'm serious about Jinjin. I've already brought her to meet my parents before. My parents like her very much. In a few days, it's a family holiday. My parents even asked me to bring Jinjin back. Uncle Lu, my father, and I both respect you very much. You're a respected old professor in Qing City. I hope to receive your blessings when I'm with Jinjin. Of course, if you insist on using the secular view and your own inherent thoughts to stop us, I will only tell you that it's impossible. Because I'm serious about Jinjin. Yijin hadn't been with Li Junsheng for a long time. She had always known that he might have liked her a little. However, it was the first time he had expressed his feelings so seriously and said such words in front of her respected grandfather. She couldn't help but look at him and hold his hand tightly. Lu Manjiang looked at the two of them holding hands, and his expression became even uglier. Chapter 805. Jinjin, come here. Seeing that Yijin didn't respond, Lu Manjiang called out again. Yijin stood there without moving. She looked at Li Junsheng, then took a step forward and looked at Lu Manjiang. Grandfather, I like Uncle Li very much. I also seriously want to date him. So I hope you won't object. Can I not object? Lu Manjiang thought of Lu Hui, and there was still sadness on his face. Back then, your mother refused to listen to me. She chose your father, and what happened in the end? You're still young. You've met too few men, and you know too few men. Jinjin, listen to grandfather. Think about it carefully. Don't be impulsive. He had already lost a daughter. This was the only bloodline left by his daughter. How could he let her suffer any more losses? How is this impulsive? I like Uncle Li, and Uncle Li likes me. Although you think he might be a little older, I really don't think it's a problem. Moreover, he wasn't much older, okay? It was only an 11-year difference. She felt that it was fine. I don't agree anyway. In Lu Manjiang's heart, his granddaughter was the best. No man in the world was worthy of her. Grandfather. Yizhen was anxious. She went forward to explain to Lu Manjiang. Lu Manjiang raised his hand. All right, you don't have to say anything. I won't agree anyway. Li Junsheng stopped Yizhen from going forward. He pressed her shoulder and gave her a comforting look, signaling her to calm down. When he turned to face Lu Manjiang, he restrained his usual aura, making him look like the gentle Mayor Li on TV. Uncle Lu. I respect you very much, so I don't quite understand why you're so opposed to me being with Jinjin. Junsheng isn't talented, but I think I'm usually clean and upright. There's never been anything that can't be said to others. I treated Jinjin with sincerity. I really can't think of any reason for you to object. Lu Manjiang didn't know what to say for a moment. He could only clear his throat and speak somewhat reluctantly. You're a politician, but Jinjin is a businessman. Your status isn't worthy. What's more, don't think that I don't know that your Li family is a big family. If Jinjin really gets together with you, I'm afraid the pressure will be great. So I don't agree. Uncle Lu, I've actually thought about the problems you're thinking about. Li Junsheng looked at Yizhen. He was over 30 years old, and this was the first time in his life that he was moved. Naturally, he had already considered all aspects of the matter. If Jinjin really wants to be with me, she just needs to be herself. I won't interfere in any of her affairs or decisions. As Li Junsheng spoke, he held Yizhen's hand tightly. She can choose to continue doing business or stay in Qing City. I don't need her to do anything for me. The so-called mayor's wife is just a title for her. I won't let it bring any pressure. I want her to be happy. Yizhen felt a warm current in his chest, a kind of impulse. She really wanted to hug this man fiercely. But Grandpa was still there, so she could only hold his hand tightly with a faint smile. She tilted her head and looked at him intently. Lu Manjiang's expression darkened when he saw what the two of them were doing. Who doesn't know how to say sweet words? How many of them could actually do it? How many promises did Yi Nanshan make back then? Not to mention the promise, the agreement that he personally signed was still there. But what did Yi Nanshan do after that? Mayor Li, I'll be straightforward. You're indeed amazing. You're so young, yet you're already in a high position. But you're still young. If a man and a woman can stay together for a lifetime with just sweet words, then there won't be so many bitter couples in this world. Uncle Lu, what I said today isn't just what I said, but also what I think in my heart. Lu Manjiang didn't believe her at all, and he didn't want to listen anymore. Mayor Li, please go back. I'll remember your help to the Lu family. But about you and Jinjin, Grandpa. Yijin couldn't help but take a step forward. Grandpa, this is between Uncle Li and me. I'm an adult. I have my own judgment. Can't you trust me once? You, Grandpa. Yijin knew that Grandpa was doing this for her own good. After her mother passed away, Grandpa was extremely sad. Although his care and love for her didn't decrease. She understood Grandpa's thoughts, but she didn't want to give up on Li Junxing. I like Uncle Li. I want to be with him. Even if we can't go to the end, I can have such a relationship with Uncle Li. I won't regret it. Li Junxing looked at his girl. She was brave and generous. Her eyes were magnanimous and bright. The more he looked at this little girl, the more he liked her. Jinjin, Dad. Don't object. Lu Zhishuan had returned at some point in time. Looking at the three people in the living room, he expressed his attitude. I think Mayor Li and Jinjin are quite suitable. Zhishuan, what nonsense are you talking about? How is this nonsense? Lu Zhishuan looked at the two of them holding hands. Dad, they're already like this now. It's useless for you to object. Besides, don't you still have us? He stood in front of Li Junxing and looked at him with a hint of intimidation. Mayor Li's identity isn't ordinary. If he really wants to do something to let Jinjin down, isn't there still us? With me here, I'll definitely not let Mayor Li hurt Jinjin. Lu Manjiang's lips moved, and he wanted to say something. But his son's attitude was so domineering. He couldn't say the rest of his words. Mayor Li, although Jinjin isn't valued by her father, she's the treasure of our Lu family. If you do something to let Jinjin down, or dare to make Jinjin sad in the future, our Lu family will definitely not let it go. Is Mayor Li ready? Li Junxing faced Lu Zhishuan with a magnanimous expression. Don't worry, you won't have that chance. I hope so. After Lu Zhishuan finished threatening him, he thought of something else. Speaking of which, I really have something to ask Mayor Li today. In that case, why don't we sit down and talk slowly? Yijin said at the right time. Lu Zhishuan and Li Junxing looked at her together. She stuck out her tongue and smiled. What Lu Zhishuan wanted to talk about was nothing more than Yi Nanshan. He wasn't an idiot. Although Yijin only asked Lu Manjiang to come forward and carry out the agreement, he could tell something different. And he couldn't tell Lu Manjiang about this. He thought that Yijin wouldn't know, and he didn't intend to let Yijin know. If Yijin really knew that his mother's death might have something to do with his father, he would probably be even more sad. He didn't know that Yijin already knew and had some guesses. However, this was just his guess, so he wanted to tell Li Junxing first. After all, he could do more and find more connections than him. Perhaps he could find more evidence. Li Junxing and Lu Zhishuan used the excuse of discussing business to go to the study. Yijin stayed behind to chat with her grandfather. She didn't know what Lu Zhishuan wanted to talk to Li Junxing about, but she trusted her uncle. She believed that with Lu Zhishuan's personality, he wouldn't make things difficult for Li Junxing. Lu Manjiang wasn't really dissatisfied with Li Junxing. He just didn't want his daughter's only love to be with a man like this. He always felt a little unhappy. Yizhen spent a lot of effort to coax Lu Manjiang. In the end, she finally made him much happier. But there was one thing. No matter what, he had to be happy. Yizhen knew that she wasn't Lu Hui, and Li Junxing wouldn't be Yi Nanshan. A person who was educated by a family like the Li family wouldn't be bad. She believed in her own judgment. Yizhen and Li Junxing had dinner at the Lu family's house. After Li Junxing returned home, he didn't hide anything and told Yizhen about Lu Zhishuan's suspicions. I didn't expect your uncle to be such a sensitive person. I didn't expect that just asking them to sue Yi Nanshan would make him think so much. When Li Junxing spoke of Lu Zhishuan, there was obvious admiration in his eyes. Speaking of which, Lu Zhishuan was also a talented and capable person. With him around, the Lu family would definitely rise to a higher level. Uncle actually knows? Yizhen didn't want her grandfather and uncle to know. But I don't have any evidence now. It's okay. I'm already looking for it. I believe there will be results soon. Li Junxing squeezed her hand. Don't worry. Now, let your father spit out the company's shares first. I'm afraid he won't agree so easily. So, we can only do it the hard way. Li Junxing looked at Yizhen and didn't want her to worry too much. Don't worry, with me, your uncle, and your grandfather here. Yi Nanshan won't be able to get away with it this time. What he had to pay attention to was Yizhen's safety. Lu Zhishuan and Lu Manjiang acted quickly. The two of them submitted a complaint to the court the next day. The information about Yizhen and Yi Nanshan's lawsuit was still there. She gave a copy of the information to Li Junxing. When Li Junxing took the agreement and asked Lu Manjiang and his son to sue Yi Nanshan, he explained everything clearly. It was even more detailed than what Yizhen had given her. Yi Nanshan didn't expect the Lu family to act so quickly. Yesterday, he went to consult a lawyer. The lawyer didn't see the original text of the agreement. He just heard Yi Nanshan say that and felt that it wasn't good. He told Yi Nanshan that the agreement was really legal. If Yizhen really took this agreement to sue Yi Nanshan and asked him to fulfill it, Yi Nanshan couldn't do anything. The only point that could be cut in was that when the agreement was signed, it was already more than 10 years ago. If Yi Nanshan didn't want to hand over the property, it could only be said that the appreciation of the painting company in the past 10 years was not included. Then, the appreciation of the painting company in the past 10 years could continue to be divided into two. That was also one for Yizhen and one for him. When Yi Nanshan heard this, he didn't say anything. Chen Wanxian couldn't take it anymore. How could there be such a thing? That little B**TCH didn't do anything and gave the company to her? Dream on. Mrs. Yi, don't get agitated. Lawyer Ding knew what she was thinking. Seriously speaking, there's no other way. But there are other things we can do. What? You were judged to have been threatened. The agreement is invalid. Also, Yizhen was Mr. Ye's daughter, after all. She's unfilial and used public opinion to make her afraid to sue you. On the other side, Yi Nanshan was still thinking that Yizhen wouldn't really dare to sue him. After all, he was her biological father. But on the other side, the person who came to sue him changed from Yizhen to Lu Manjiang. Yi Nanshan was caught off guard. When he saw the subpoena sent by the court, he couldn't think of anything for a moment. He could only go to Lawyer Ding again. Yizhen was relieved when she knew that the case had been accepted. No matter how it was judged, Yi Nanshan wouldn't be able to get away with it. And she just had to wait for the result. Before that, she needed to think of a way to find out the truth behind Lu Hui's death. It was true that Yi Nanshan had a change of heart, but she absolutely believed that Lu Hui's death was an accident. With her uncle's help, Ling Xian, and Li Junxing's attention, she believed that the matter would definitely be solved. She was very busy during this period of time, and Li Junxing was also very busy during this period of time. Li Junxing was implicated in the factory explosion last time, although he was fine in the end. But for Li Junxing, it was an opportunity. those in the dark who wanted to drag him down from his horse. He had to keep a close eye on them. Yijin could feel that Li Junsheng was busy, and so could she. The change of power in the painting company had passed, and the company slowly stabilized. Many of the cooperation projects had begun to negotiate again and wanted to sign a contract again. It was also at this time that the news of Yijin suing her father broke out. After careful consideration, Yi Nanshan decided to guide the wind in this direction. Although Yijin didn't appear, why did Lu Manjiang appear? Wasn't it because of you, Yijin? Since you won't let me live well, why should I let you live well? Under Yi Ningen and Chen Wan's repeated persuasion, Yi Nanshan agreed and dragged Yizhen into the water. Yizhen had just taken over the company not long ago. It was the time to build up his prestige, but now, he suddenly fell into such a vortex. A post appeared on the internet. It was a very popular forum in the local area. Then, the content of the post was to dig deep into the dirty affairs of a local listed company. It mentioned that a woman with the surname Y had driven her biological father out of the company for the sake of the company and the property. She had even sued her father for the property. Yizhen had an appointment with the boss of Tingda Company that day. Who knew that not long after they sat down, the boss of Tingda Company called to say that the other party was very busy. He was not free and would make an appointment another day. It wasn't just Tingda. The next day, when another company wanted to discuss a cooperation, they suddenly stood up. After this happened several times in a row, Yizhen realized that something was wrong. Before she could ask someone to find out what was going on, Chu Te told her first. Chu Te found the post and showed it to Yizhen. In a few days, the number of comments on the post had exceeded 100,000, and there were tens of thousands of shares. Almost all of them were one-sided accusations against this daughter. All of them were scolding her for being inhumane and even suing her biological father. Not only that, but the comments below were also trying to set the pace. Chapter 806. There were all kinds of negative comments and accusations, and people could feel the hostility even through the screen. Yizhen looked at the post and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She wouldn't even have a trace of sadness. She just thought it was ridiculous. Did Yi Nanshan run out of tricks? She actually dared to hire the internet water army to smear her name? Didn't he know that she didn't care about other people's evaluation of her? If she was sad about such things every day, then she didn't want to live anymore. But, Chairman Yi, I think you should get someone to deal with it quickly. Chu Te thought more than Yizhen. Those companies suddenly stood us up and said they don't want to cooperate. They might have this intention. If we don't solve it soon, our company's reputation will go down the drain. How could others dare to cooperate with an unfilial ruler who could abandon his own father? Although the cooperation was between two companies, personal feelings shouldn't be involved. But the people who cooperated with them wouldn't think like that. They would only listen to what they heard, see what they saw, and then make their own judgment. What Chu Te understood, Yizhen naturally understood too. I got it. Thank you, Chu Te. Although it was a rumor, if it wasn't solved, the impact would be huge. Letting Chu Te leave first, Yizhen looked at the page in front of her and silently rubbed her forehead. Yi Nanshan was really her good father. The phone rang. Ling Xian's voice sounded anxious. Jinjin, are you okay? I'm fine. I saw the post online. What's going on? What did your father say? Didn't he sue you? Yizhen briefly explained the matter. Ling Xian was furious. Jinjin, you're really too easy to talk to. If you ask me, you can't deal with it like this. Yes, what do you want to say? He can post, so can we. We can also post about how evil your father was in the past and how despicable he is now. After Ling Xian finished speaking, she felt that she had said something wrong. No matter how bad Yi Nanshan was, he was still Yizhen's father. It didn't seem right for her to scold him like this. Jinjin, it's okay. I understand what you mean. Yizhen's heart didn't waver at all. Yi Nanshan was definitely a model scumbag. What's your plan now? My grandfather and uncle came forward to sue him, but he still managed to drag me into it. This can only mean that he's at his wit's end. There's no better way. Yizhen thought of Yi Nanshan. He had done something to her. Should she do the same? Xian, I'll send you a document later. Take a look and find someone to write a post about it. Okay. Ling Xian's voice immediately became spirited. You should have done this a long time ago. She really couldn't stand it. You shouldn't have let him off during the trial. You should have let the whole of Qingqing know about the bad things he did. I really want to slap your stepsister when I think of her pretentious face. All right. Yi Zhen laughed in spite of herself. We won't be jumping for too long. Don't worry. I know what to do. When Li Junxing returned home, he found that Yi Zhen was obviously in a bad mood. He was very busy during this period of time. He had to deal with the aftermath of the factory. There was also the matter of being reported. Although it was fine now. However, there were still many loose ends to deal with. Therefore, a few days ago, he didn't notice that Yi Zhen was being defamed on the internet. It was also Secretary Chen who knew that he valued Yi Zhen, so he would tell him if there was any news. He had just seen the post and just found out that the little girl had been bullied again without him knowing. He walked to Yi Zhen and sat down next to her. He held her hand in his. I've already sent someone to deal with it. I don't think we'll see that post tomorrow. It's okay. I've already asked Ling Xian to deal with it. As long as he posted another post and suppressed the previous popularity, it shouldn't be a big problem. Do you need my help with anything else? If he hadn't specially cared about her today, he wouldn't have known that so many people were making things difficult for his little girl behind the scenes. He really couldn't bear it. No need. Yi Zhen knew that his heart was enough. She shook her head. Don't worry. I can do it. I don't need your help. If there's something you can't solve, or if they're too much, you must tell me. Okay. Yi Zhen smiled. Li Juanxing's indulgent attitude and doting eyes made her gloominess dissipate. Uncle Li, don't worry. If I really need your help, I won't stand on ceremony. However, if she could solve this business matter by herself, she would solve it by herself. Not only could Li Junxing think of a way to make her live a comfortable life, but she also wanted him to worry less. Other than blood relatives, who would take their efforts for granted? She understood the logic. She wouldn't squander Li Junxing's sincerity endlessly. Li Junxing looked at the little girl's bright eyes and gently pulled her into his arms. What a silly girl. Only when you love someone will you indulge yourself. It didn't matter if the little girl didn't want to rely on him. He believed that after a long time, the little girl would understand. Whether it was a couple or a couple, they were all one. There were some things that really didn't need to be calculated too clearly, nor did it need to be said too clearly. Soon, another post appeared under that post. The so-called True Wood Eyes. The post began to write about everything that had happened between Yi Nanshan and Lu Hui from a storytelling point of view, including the name of the company and Lu Hui's contributions to the company over the years. There was no real name used in this post, only a nickname. For example, a certain boss, the original wife, and the mistress. The original wife in the post was still running around when she was pregnant. Not long after she gave birth to the child, she started running around for the company again. Later, her health deteriorated and she never had a second child. But at this time, what was the mistress doing? The post was very clear. Not only was it clear, but there was also a timeline. For example, the mistress's daughter was only a few months younger than the original wife's daughter. What did this mean? Another example was that after the original wife found out that her husband had an affair, her health plummeted. There wasn't much said here. After all, Yi Zhen was still investigating what happened back then. But this evidence was enough. Below the post that scolded her, there were still many people criticizing her. However, a lot of people went to read the new post. In the end, many people couldn't help but curse. F***ck, how can a scumbag be so shameless? It's simply ruining my worldview. A scumbag and a mistress are a match made in heaven. Poor original wife, blind to meet a scumbag. Please search for this scumbag. Please search for the daughter of this scumbag and his mistress. From today onwards, there is finally a man who is even scummier than Chin Shimmy back then. There is no scumbag, only scumbag. As expected, a Phoenix man can't be tolerated. Yijin picked some replies and glanced at them. When she realized that the wind was beginning to turn in the other direction, she was more or less relieved. At the same time, the court announced the time of the trial. The verdict for Yi Nanshan's extramarital affair was to be carried out. In fact, this was the first time that the Qing City Court had dealt with such a matter. Although Yi Nanshan had an affair, his original wife was no longer around. Now, the original father and brother were the plaintiffs, asking for a redistribution of the inheritance. This kind of thing had never happened before. The Qing City Court had originally thought that this matter would be held in secret like the last time. Unexpectedly, this time, Lu Manjiang said that he wanted to hold a public trial. Yijin knew that if the trial was held in public, the Yi family's background would immediately become the subject of public discussion. She didn't want to see such a thing happen. After all, family scandals should not be aired in public. But now, she changed her mind because she really didn't want Yi Nanshan to be too proud. Since he didn't care about his face, why should she give him face? Li Junsheng had a meeting to attend today. It was autumn, and he was wearing an iron gray suit. If a man wore such a color, he would probably look old. However, he was handsome and had a gentle and elegant temperament. Not only did he not look old, but he also looked a little more abstinent. After dinner, he looked at Yizhen, who had a serious expression, and reached out to pinch her palm. "Don't be nervous, we won't lose." Yizhen shook her head. "I'm not afraid of losing." Lawyer Tang had specially met with them yesterday and had already told them all the possible outcomes. Although the agreement was still valid, more than 10 years had passed. In addition, one of the real plaintiffs, Lu Hui, was no longer around. In fact, there was still the possibility of other situations happening. Lawyer Tang was an expert in economic lawsuits. He said that he would do his best. However, he also had to consider other possible outcomes. Yizhen sighed when she met Li Juansheng's seemingly puzzled gaze. "I was just thinking about my mother. If Lu Hui knew that the person she finally fell in love with and insisted on being with was such a scumbag, would she regret it?" Li Junsheng didn't say anything. In fact, the previous investigation had already made great progress. However, there was still a lack of evidence. "Jinjin, do you want me to go with you?" "No need." Yizhen shook her head. "Uncle Li, go to work. Don't worry. No matter what the outcome is, I can accept it." Li Junsheng smiled and reached out to gently tap her nose. "And, remember, no matter what the outcome is, you still have me." Yizhen nodded heavily, stood on her tiptoes, and kissed his lips. There were a lot of people in the court today. Many of those who came to attend the hearing had read the post. Although there was a post at the back, many people were already prejudiced. They stood on Yi Nanshan's side. Especially those who liked to hold up the banner of filial piety, they felt that Yizhen was simply a model of unfilial daughter. Yizhen didn't care about those people's gazes. In fact, she was neither the defendant nor the plaintiff today. As an observer, all she needed to do was sit in the spectator seats. Soon, the trial began. First, the plaintiff, who was Lu Manjiang's side, presented their own evidence and expressed their claims. Lu Manjiang held the agreement. This agreement had been notarized after Yi Nanshan had signed it. It does have legal validity. When Yi Nanshan looked at the agreement, his expression was quite ugly. Lawyer Ding, who was next to him, patted his shoulder and gave him a comforting look. Yizhen saw this scene. Her brows furrowed slightly. Chapter 807. Yi Zhen looked worriedly in the direction of Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan. Lu Manjiang didn't notice his granddaughter's gaze. After asking Lawyer Tang to submit all the evidence, he faced the judge with a sad expression. "Your Honor, I only have one daughter. Her mother passed away when she was very young. I really don't have high expectations for this daughter. I just want her to live a safe and happy life." But all of this was destroyed by Yi Nanshan. As Lu Manjiang's side submitted more and more evidence to the court, Yi Nanshan's actions were naturally exposed. It was a fact that he had cheated and treated Yi Zhen badly. Since he had already cheated, then it should be judged according to the facts. The shares of the entire shogi company must be given to Lu Hui. And Lu Hui had already passed away. That was to give all the shares of the company to Lu Hui's daughter, Yi Zhen. This was Lu Manjiang's request. He hoped to give all the shares in Yi Nanshan's hands to Yi Zhen. After Lu Manjiang finished his request, Lawyer Ding, who was sitting next to Yi Nanshan, stood up. "Your Honor, I object. We also have evidence." Lawyer Ding submitted the evidence prepared by Yi Nanshan. Part of it was that Lu Hui had been dead for so many years, but the shogi company had been supported by Lu Shan for so many years. It was completely unreasonable to let Yi Nanshan leave the family with nothing. In more than 10 years, the market value of the shogi company had increased more than 10 times. The growth of the past 10 years could not be counted as 10 years ago. 10 years ago, Yi Nanshan's shares were not worth anything at all. Naturally, there was no need to give shogi much money. The judge was silent. Based on the market value, what the other party said made some sense. But the specific operation still needed to be discussed, or to see if the two sides could communicate well. Before Lu Manjiang could provide more evidence, Lawyer Ding spoke again. "The above is based on the request put forward by the other party and our view. Of course. We now have a new view. My defendant has evidence to prove that Lu Hui cheated during the continuation of the marriage." As he spoke, Lawyer Ding looked at Lu Manjiang and his son opposite him. "So my client requests that the plaintiff compensate for the loss and the loss of reputation." As soon as this was said, the audience in the trial booed. No one had expected such a reversal. Nonsense. Yi Zhen stood up abruptly and looked in the direction of Lawyer Ding and Yi Nanshan in shock. "Quiet." The judge knocked on the table. Yi Zhen's expression was ugly. Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan both glared at Yi Nanshan. "Defendant, you said that Lu Hui cheated. Do you have any evidence?" "Of course." As Lawyer Ding spoke, he took out a piece of paper. "This is the evidence." As they were too far away, Yi Zhen couldn't see what the other party was holding. However, she believed in her mother. She believed that her mother would never cheat on Yi Nanshan. She did not expect Yi Nanshan to be so despicable. Even at this time, he still wanted to bite back. Lawyer Ding handed the document to the judge. "This is a paternity test report. The results show that my client, Mr. Yi Nanshan, and his daughter, Yi Zhen, are not father and daughter. In other words, Lu Hui also cheated during the marriage. That is all. I hope the court will take my client's request seriously. As for the agreement left behind by Madame Lu Hui, we need to reevaluate it." "You're talking nonsense." Yi Zhen glared at Yi Nanshan. "You won't even let my mother go after her death. Yi Nanshan, how can you do this?" "Quiet, quiet." The judge knocked on the table again. How could Yi Zhen be quiet? Not to mention her mother's tragic death, she couldn't even keep her reputation after her death. Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan looked at each other. They did not expect such a reversal at all. Lu Zhishuan was the first to react. He quickly said a few words in Lawyer Tang's ear. Lawyer Tang nodded and stood up. "Your Honor, I have a different opinion." "What opinion?" "The defendant just provided a paternity test report. However, as far as I know, Madame Yi Zhen has never done a paternity test with Yi Nanshan. Can I say that the results of this paternity test may be fake? Impossible. Lawyer Ding did not give his opponent such a chance. Yi Zhen has indeed not done a paternity test with my client. However, we have taken the hair that Yi Zhen left at home and tested it with my client. Therefore, the results of this test are true and valid. True and valid is what you said. Your Honor, the defendant did the test without my client's approval. I have every reason to suspect that the results are fake. That's just your suspicion. Fine. Since you said that the test is real and the defendant believes that my client, Madame Lu Hui, is having an affair, then you wouldn't mind doing another paternity test, right? Your Honor, I strongly request that the defendant, Yi Nanshan, and Miss Yi Zhen do another paternity test. Guilt flashed in Yi Nanshan's eyes. Others did not notice that trace of emotion, but Lu Hui, who had been staring at him, did. She felt a huge surge of anger in her heart. The feeling of anger. She did not expect Yi Nanshan to be so despicable. For the sake of shares, for the sake of money, he slandered her mother's innocence. He could even abandon her as his daughter and deny her. Your Honor, as the key person in this matter, I also strongly request that Mr. Yi Nanshan and I do another paternity test. Also, I hope that this test will be conducted under the supervision of the relevant staff of the court, to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Your Honor, our results are out. There is no need for a new test. What's more, this is not today's topic. How is it not today's topic? Lawyer Tang did not give in to Lawyer Ding. You already said that my client, Lu Hui, had an affair. Since that is the case, of course, I have to prove my client's innocence. Your Honor. Lawyer Ding wanted to say something, but the judge on the dais knocked on the table again. Quiet. The plaintiff's request is reasonable. The court agrees to another paternity test for the defendant. Immediately, the court will carry it out. Yi Zhen breathed a sigh of relief. The court also announced that there was insufficient evidence and new developments. Therefore, before they received the paternity test report for Yi Nanshan and Yi Zhen, the court adjourned temporarily. This result was both good and bad news. After the hearing ended, Yi Zhen rushed to Yi Nanshan immediately. Dad, are you really not afraid that my mother will come to you in the middle of the night? Yi Nanshan did not even look at Yi Zhen. He was confident that no matter how many paternity tests were done, the results would be the same. Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan and seemed to understand something. I see. Yi Nanshan should have thought of this long ago, right? He had always thought that he was not good to her. He was not good to her before Lu Hui's death. After Lu Hui's death, he was even worse to her. She had always thought that Yi Nanshan was cold-hearted and only loved money. Now, it seemed that there were other twists and turns that she did not know. Looking at Yi Nanshan's expression, it was clear that he and she were not father and daughter. In this way, all the cold treatment in the past could be explained. No wonder. Yi Nanshan looked at Yi Zhen coldly. There was no warmth on his face. Yi Zhen nodded. Since Mr. Yi is so confident, then please. True gold fears no fire. She did not believe it. Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan looked at Yi Nanshan. They almost wanted to beat him up. However, in the court, there were not only onlookers around, but also reporters who came to interview and gossip. Yi Nanshan and Yi Zhen, accompanied by the court staff, went to the test center together. Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan returned to the Lu family home first. The trial had not yet come to a conclusion, but the online post had been updated. The title, "What a Mess the Noble Circle Is," was very eye-catching. The content of the post was nothing more than saying that Lu Hui had also cheated and was unfaithful to her marriage. If this was the case, then what right did Yi Zhen have to sue his own father? Disgusting. She is clearly not his biological daughter, yet she wants to seize what doesn't belong to her. So shameless. Her own mother gave birth to an illegitimate child with another man, yet she wants to divide the property? So disgusting. I've never seen such a person before. So shameless. Those posts quickly spread. By the time Yi Zhen and Yi Nanshan returned home after the paternity test, the post had been forwarded and commented on even more than the previous one. The post that Ling Xian had asked someone to post had long since been forgotten. Even if there were one or two people who spoke up, they were quickly taken over by the internet water army. They all started to scold the most shameless first wife and illegitimate daughter in the history of Qingcheng. Yi Zhen had just returned home when he received a call from Ling Xian. Ling Xian's tone was very urgent. "Jinjin, have you seen the post?" "No." "What post?" Yi Zhen didn't know what Ling Xian was talking about, but she still went online as fast as she could and opened the local forum. The post that said that the circle of the rich was really messy had already been pinned. She looked at the content on top and the curses of the netizens below. She was so angry that her hand holding the mouse was trembling. "Yi Nanshan, Yi Ningen, and Chen Wan. You guys are so shameless. Especially Yi Nanshan. Hateful, too hateful." She couldn't help but tremble. She was so angry that her breathing became ragged. The veins on the back of her hand popped out. Just as she was about to smash the mouse in hatred, her body was surrounded by a warm embrace. Li Junsheng hugged her tightly and gently patted her back. "Relax, relax. I'm here. Jinjin, I'm here. Calm down. I hate him, I really hate him. I can't wait to kill him." What company, what shares, nothing was important to her, but her mother, Lu Hui, was the last soft place in her heart, her bottom line. She wouldn't allow Yi Nanshan to ruin Lu Hui's reputation like this. This is too much. How can he be so much? How could there be such a ruthless person in the world? A day as husband and wife meant 100 days of love. Could it be that to Yi Nanshan, the things that his mother had done for him were completely ungrateful? Jinjin. Jinjin. Li Junsheng felt her body tremble and his heart ached. He hugged her tightly. Yi Zhen buried her face in Li Junsheng's chest. She felt her heart ache. For Lu Hui, and for her. "Jinjin, calm down. Listen to me. This matter is about to end." He comforted Yi Zhen's hand and opened her tightly clenched fingers one by one, afraid that she would hurt herself. Li Junsheng's voice was full of heartache and unintentional pity. "Jinjin, I found the evidence." This sentence made Yi Zhen suddenly raise her head. She looked at Li Junsheng, her eyes filled with disbelief. Her body hadn't recovered from the stiffness. She just stared at him in a daze. What did you say?" "I said, I've already found the cause of your mother's death." The huge surprise made Yi Zhen unable to come back to her senses. Really? It's true." During this period of time, Li Junsheng had been asking people to investigate this matter. Although it was a long time ago, it wasn't that there were no clues to be found. Everything that had been done would leave traces. Chen Wan's hand had been very long back then. For the time being, he wasn't sure if Yi Nanshan knew about it. But whether he knew or not, this matter had already come to an end. "Who?" Yi Zhen suddenly grabbed the front of Li Junsheng's shirt. At that moment, her eyes were filled with hatred. "Jinjin." Li Junsheng couldn't bear to see her like this. His girl, as long as she was happy and carefree, it was fine. He would be the one to deal with the dark side of things. "Jinjin, this is the evidence. I've already asked people to find the witnesses. They've been locked up in secret. I asked Director Chen to deal with this matter. He's very experienced. Don't worry, he won't make any more mistakes." "Who exactly is it?" Yi Zhen had to know who her enemy was. Li Junsheng hugged her body in his arms again and kept patting her back. "Jinjin, everything will be judged by the law. I know you hate me, and I know what you want to do. But these things shouldn't be done by you. I just want to know who it is. Your family used to have a nanny who worked as a maid. Her name is Wang Chunhua. Li Junxing briefly told him what had happened. Wang Chunhua came from the countryside. Her family wasn't well off at that time. Her man was accidentally hit by a car, and after the driver escaped, she still needed a lot of money to treat him. When Wang Chunhua was at her wit's end, she was met by Lu Hui. She had always been kind and felt pity for Wang Chunhua. She let her enter the Yi family as a nanny. At first, it was fine. Wang Chunhua received Lu Hui's kindness and did her best to do things. But later on, her man's treatment costs increased. She had no choice but to listen to Chen Wan's instigation. Chen Wan agreed to pay for her man's treatment. And in order to treat her man's illness, she finally agreed to Chen Wan's request and poisoned Lu Hui. She was also naive. She believed what Chen Wan said. The poison didn't have much effect. It only made people weak. When the time came, she wouldn't be in the mood to deal with business and make Yi Nanshan unhappy. Only then would she have a chance to get promoted. However, she didn't know that the slow-acting poison would slowly corrode a person's internal organs. Yi Zhen's body went soft. She looked at Li Junxing in a daze. She couldn't believe that her mother had died at the hands of such a person. Chapter 808. How could there be such a thing? How could there be such a person? Yi Zhen also remembered a little about Wang Chunhua. A woman from the countryside. When she first came, she was still a little timid. Although she was young at that time, there was a period of time when she felt that Wang Chunhua really didn't look good. She was afraid everywhere and didn't even dare to speak loudly. If it weren't for this, she wouldn't have remembered such a person. But it was such a person who had caused her mother's death. She couldn't help but curl up her body in Li Junxing's arms. Li Junxing's face was full of heartache, but this time, even his words of comfort seemed weak. Jinjin, don't be sad. The dead are gone. Your mother wouldn't want to see you like this. Yi Zhen's gums were clenched tightly, and the huge hatred made her facial features scrunch up. I want revenge. I want to make them pay the price. Okay, everything's okay. Li Junxing could understand her feelings. His hand moved up and down her back. Calm down first. You won't be able to do anything like this. Yi Zhen didn't say anything. With great difficulty, she finally calmed down and looked up at Li Junxing. Which police station is Wang Chunhua at now? Yes. Don't worry. I'll ask Chief Chen to get someone to keep an eye on her. I won't let her have a chance to run away. As if to comfort Yi Zhen, Li Junxing pulled her hand over and held it in his. We went to look for her this time. At first, we didn't find her, and it didn't go well. But later, when we found her, she admitted to her crimes very readily. Do you know why? Yi Zhen looked at Li Junxing. He paused for a moment. Her man is dead. Not only her man, but she and her man also have a son and a daughter. They're all dead. She said it was retribution, so when we came to her door, she admitted to her crime very readily. Wang Chunhua had poisoned Lu Hui back then to get money to treat her man's illness. However, she didn't expect that her man's illness wasn't cured in the end. Later, after spending all the money, her man still died. After her man died, her son and daughter also died one after another because of accidents. Yi Zhen's mood didn't fluctuate. She wasn't a saint and wouldn't sympathize with the person who had hurt her mother. However, are you sure that both of her children's deaths were accidents? Why did she feel that Chen Wan might have done it because she wanted to silence them? Since Chen Wan could think of poisoning Lu Hui, there was no guarantee that she wouldn't make a move on Wang Chunhua in order to intimidate her and prevent her from talking about what happened in the past. Li Junxing fell into deep thought when he heard that. He thought of the information he had gathered. Wang Chunhua's son didn't go to college. After graduating from high school, he went to learn a trade. Later, he found a woman from the same village. They were about to get married, but she suddenly fell into the river and drowned. How deep could the river in the countryside be? It was just a small river. And her daughter, who was working outside and doing well, died in a car accident. Although it was called retribution, this matter was indeed suspicious. Yes, I will send someone to check it out. If it was really Chen Wan's doing, then it could only be said that this woman was too terrifying. But don't worry, regardless of whether Wang Chunhua's children were an accident or not, it is a fact that Chen Wan instructed her to poison your mother. She can't escape the punishment of the law either. Yes. Yizhen nodded. When she met Li Juanxing's comforting gaze, she hugged him tightly. Uncle Li, thank you. Ling Xian couldn't find anything after investigating for so long, but he found it. He always said that it didn't matter if she used him, but his help to her was no longer something that could be explained with a drop of water. Silly girl. Li Juanxing pinched her little face. You never have to say thank you to me. Yizhen's reaction was to reach out and wrap her arms around his waist, burying her face in his chest again. The online post had been deleted. How could Li Juanxing allow those people to slander his mother-in-law like this? There were new posts, but they were quickly deleted and suppressed by others. On the contrary, the post that Ling Xian had someone expose had always been at the top of the forum. Yizhen didn't care whether the company would suffer losses or not, nor did she care about her reputation outside. But she cared about Lu Hui. Lu Hui was no longer around, but Lu Hui's reputation couldn't be lost. This was her last bottom line, so she didn't refuse Li Juanxing's help. 2 days later, the results of the paternity test came out. Neither Yizhen's side nor Yinanshan's side were notified. Instead, the court directly went to get the results. Another 2 days later, the trial began. This time, Li Juanxing handed the new evidence he found to lawyer Tang again. Yizhen didn't see the paternity test, so she didn't know what the results were. But she believed in her mother. She believed that with Lu Hui's character, it was impossible for her to do such a thing. Everything that followed was more like a wrangle. The results of the paternity test showed that Yizhen was 99.9% likely to be Yinanshan's daughter. In front of the evidence, Yinanshan had nothing to say. Chen Wan wanted to say something, but she could only listen from the sidelines now. Looking at Chen Wan's face and thinking that her mother had died in the hands of such a woman, Yizhen was furious. Li Juanxing patted Yizhen's hand. He came to attend the trial with her today. When he first arrived, the judge was nervous. He didn't understand why a small trial would alarm the mayor. But when he saw Yizhen and Li Juanxing holding hands together, the judge's forehead was sweating. It's okay. I'm just here to listen as a family member. You guys do things according to principles. Don't worry about anyone. Li Juanxing spoke frankly. They entered the court earlier. Later, many onlookers came over. Everyone saw Li Juanxing and thought that the man was really good-looking. But no one thought of him as the mayor. After all, who had nothing better to do in the city and came to watch such a trial? The trial continued, and the two sides were arguing fiercely. Yizhen was Yinanshan's daughter, so there was no evidence that Lu Hui had an affair. Lawyer Ding changed his tune and continued to talk about Yinanshan's contributions to the company over the past decade. If he wanted to say that, Lawyer Tang also had evidence. In the past few years, because of the foundation laid by Lu Hui and the Lu family's connections, Yinanshan was able to continue to run the company well after losing Lu Hui. Both sides insisted on their own arguments. Yinanshan sat in the defendant's seat and looked at Yizhen in the audience. Li Juanxing regretted not asking Yizhen to sign the transfer of the shares when she was still underage. The trial was still going on, but Lawyer Tang suddenly stood up. Your Honor, I have a new piece of evidence to submit now. What? My client has evidence to prove that Ms. Lu Hui's death was not an accident. Therefore, I strongly request that Your Honor review it again after seeing all the evidence on our side. Before the court could react, someone in uniform entered the court. They walked directly in front of Chen Wan. Hello, you're Chen Wan, right? Yes. Chen Wan was dumbfounded when she heard Lawyer Tang say that Lu Hui's death was not an accident. Before she could react, the police arrived. "We now suspect that you are involved in a murder case. Please come with us." "Are you kidding me?" Yi Ningen stood up and reached out to stop them, but it was too late. Chen Wan was taken away by the police. Such a sudden turn of events stunned everyone. The judge was stunned. How could they arrest someone in such a way? He looked at Li Junsheng, who was sitting in the audience, and felt that it should have been like this. With such an accident, Ni's trial was suspended again. Yi Nanshan applied for an adjournment. After the judge announced the adjournment, he directly rushed to Yi Zhen. "You unfilial daughter, what did you do?" "Mr. Yi." Li Junsheng was standing beside Yi Zhen, so Yi Zhen was not afraid of Yi Nanshan at all. "You shouldn't ask me what I did now. You should ask your good wife, my good aunt, what she did." Yi Nanshan raised his hand and was about to teach Yi Zhen a lesson, but his hand was grabbed by Li Junsheng. "Mr. Yi, this is in court. Are you sure you want to leave more evidence to change the judge's opinion of you?" Yi Nanshan was furious, but he could only let it go. Yi Ningen looked at the scene in front of her, and a huge feeling of unease surged in her heart. Her mother was probably in big trouble this time. 2 days later, the court made a final decision. The agreement signed by Yi Nanshan was notarized and was true and valid. It was a fact that Yi Nanshan had cheated, and there was no problem with Lu Manjiang's request to carry out the agreement. However, Lawyer Ding's request also made some sense. In the past 10 years, the shares under Yi Nanshan's name had increased a lot. The final result was that the court ruled that Yi Nanshan should keep 5% of the shares, and the rest should be given to Yi Zhen. As for the other movable and immovable assets under his name, they would still be left to Yi Nanshan for the time being. Lu Manjiang had no intention of killing him. If things really went that far, Yi Zhen would probably be condemned by others again. This was the decision of Lu Zhishuan and Lu Manjiang. Lu Hui had passed away. According to the inheritance law, Lu Manjiang also had a share of her assets. Lu Manjiang didn't want this share, but directly asked Yi Nanshan to transfer the shares to Yi Zhen. Yi Nanshan didn't accept this ruling and asked for another appeal. But he didn't wait for another appeal. The police had already formally filed a lawsuit against Chen Wan on behalf of the prosecution, and the charge was murder. The court's ruling and the police's complaint against Chen Wan caused the entire shogi group to fall into a storm. However, Yi Zhen, who had experience, wasn't afraid at all. She asked Ling Xian to find someone to write another post. This time, the title was Uncovering Those Scary Mistresses. The post continued to follow the original post in detail, focusing on how Chen Wan harmed people. Wang Chunhua had been caught and had pleaded guilty. It was a fact that Chen Wan had ordered her to poison people. These two things were clear. The post made it very clear that Chen Wan, as a mistress, had caused the death of the first wife. And Yi Zhen, as the daughter who had been left behind, wanted to take back the assets and avenge her mother. What was wrong with that? On the other hand, Yi Nanshan was a scumbag to the bone. Not only had he cheated, but because of his cheating, he had facilitated Lu Hui's death. Seriously speaking, Yi Nanshan could also be considered a murderer. The position of the post was clear, and the thinking was clear. There was also a timeline, evidence, and so on. As soon as this post was published, those who had supported Yi Nanshan and helped to scold Yi Zhen seemed to have disappeared without a trace. And those who had supported Yi Zhen and supported her were all filled with righteous indignation. Damn, how could there be such a shameless mistress? Damn, so it's true that novels originate from life. Poisoning the first wife? Why didn't she just die? It's scary to think about it. Why do I feel that the scumbag might have been involved in the death of the first wife? I agree with the person above. I feel that even if the scumbag didn't do it directly, he must have known about it. I agree with the person above plus 10086. I think the scumbag must have done something. One more thing, the scumbag's verdict is out. The first wife's daughter won the case, but the scumbag refused to accept it and wanted to appeal. Please don't let him win. Otherwise, where will the retribution be? Yijin didn't pay attention to it all the time. But someone would come and tell her about it. She casually closed the page. No matter what, Chen Wan could forget about making a comeback in this life. As for Yi Nanshan, it didn't matter whether he appealed or not. Because he wouldn't win. This matter is considered settled. Li Junxing sat next to her, picked up her phone, and put it aside. Believe me, Chen Wan will definitely go to jail. As for your father, even if he appeals again, it's useless. Because he won't win. At that time, even if Yi Nanshan appealed, the original verdict would only be upheld. Giving Yi Nanshan 5% was considered extremely benevolent. If he still didn't know what was good for him and still wanted to continue to be greedy and want more, then Li Junxing naturally wouldn't let him be too complacent. But if it's confirmed that Yi Nanshan is indeed related to the death of your mother, then it won't be as simple as losing shares. Yijin nodded. Right now, I only hope that he has nothing to do with this matter. That way, at least it could prove that the man Lu Hui loved back then wasn't a scumbag to the end. Don't think about it. Li Junxing held her hand and said gently, You've been too tired recently. You're as tense as a string. I think why don't I take you out to relax? Relax? Yijin bit her lip. Chen Wan's case hasn't been decided yet. It won't be decided so soon. At least until the police find out whether the death of Wang Chunhua's 2 children was an accident. I know. I just hope that it can be faster. She had waited for this day for too long. She had watched Chen Wan's complacency for too long. She had hated for too long. She hoped that these things could be resolved quickly. She wanted those people to stay away from her life. From then on, whether it was Chen Wan or Yi Ningen, they would all get out of her life. It will be very fast. Li Junxing didn't like to see her worry about this matter. Alright, don't think about it. I'll take you out. Let's go play, how about it? Where to? Come on, follow me and you'll know. Chapter 809. Yijin looked at the building in front of her and turned her face. She was a little excited and a little confused. She didn't understand how Li Junxing knew about this place. Xinjin. Li Junxing held her hand, pushed open the carved copper door outside, and walked inside. This is my gift to you. Yijin was speechless. She looked at the building in front of her and felt very emotional. This small courtyard, this house. It was where Lu Hui and Yi Nanshan lived when they first got married. The time they had spent here had been the best of all. At that time, for Yijin, his parents loved him dearly and his family was happy. Although the house was small, it contained all of his mother's attention. The flowers and plants outside the yard were planted by her mother. Every room inside was personally designed and decorated by Lu Hui. She had once thought that she would live here for the rest of her life. She put her mind to it. Make it a home. Unfortunately, Yi Nanshan was determined to succeed in his career at that time. He couldn't do it without Lu Hui. Lu Hui had no choice but to follow him and carry the shogi company. Later on, the company grew bigger and bigger. Yi Nanshan was making more and more money. In order to save face, he bought the place where they lived now. It was an extremely gorgeous villa. Everything was the best, but it had lost the feeling of home. After her mother passed away, Yi Zhen was afraid that she would miss her. In addition, she didn't have this property in her inheritance. She thought that her parents had sold this place in order to start a business. She didn't expect Li Junxing to bring her back here today. This place was almost sold. Li Junxing looked at the expression on Yi Zhen's face and seemed to know what she was thinking. Back then, when Yi Nanshan was negotiating a joint venture, he happened to be short on funds. At that time, housing prices in Qinqing had just risen, and your family had just moved to a big villa. Your father wants to sell this house. It was your mother who didn't agree. Later on, the group's funds had to be resolved. She secretly went to look for your grandfather. Thanks to your grandfather, she managed to get the funds but left this place behind. At that time, Yi Nanshan said he wanted to mortgage this place to your grandfather to save face. After your mother passed away, your grandfather came here. He was afraid that gambling would hurt him, so he never came. Later, he didn't want to see the house sad, so it was left empty. This time, when I was investigating the true tree of your mother's death, I also found this place. Jinjin, I have brought back the mortgage. Now, it's yours. Of course, in order to convince Lu Manjiang to transfer the property to him, he spent a lot of effort. If Lu Manjiang hadn't known that he was using this as a gift for Yi Zhen, he probably wouldn't have nodded so readily. Yi Zhen turned to look at him. That sour yet sweet feeling came again. After her mother passed away, she had to work hard to grow up. In the process of trying to grow up, it was inevitable that she would neglect the beauty of the past. She never thought that he would actually bring her here and give her such a gift. She couldn't tell what she was feeling. She could only jump up and hug Li Junsheng. Uncle Li, thank you. No one had ever been so nice to her. Except for his mother. Unfortunately, Lu Hui died young. After she left, Yi Zhen was no different from an orphan. No matter how well off the Yi family was, no matter how generous they were. Without the company of his parents and close relatives, what fun was there? I've said it before. You don't have to thank me. Uncle Li, Yi Zhen buried her face tightly in Li Juansheng's arms. She smelled his scent and was moved. I like you. I like you too. Perhaps it was more than like, or a lot more. Uncle Li, Yi Zhen suddenly raised her head to look at him. Her hands were still tightly clinging to his shoulders, but the emotions on her little face looked a little nervous. Yes? Uncle Li, let's get married. Yi Zhen said as if she was going all out. In the past, because of Yi Nanshan, she had never thought of falling in love, nor had she ever thought of getting married. But now, it was different. Now, she really felt that if she could spend the rest of her life with Li Junsheng, she would also look forward to it very much. Li Junsheng smiled. When he smiled, it made people feel that the world was bright. His little girl was sometimes very bold. When she was in bed, she was very shy, but now, she took the initiative to propose. Zhen, I really want to say yes. This was the first time he had been proposed to by a girl. What did he mean? Yi Zhen looked at him in confusion. Although I really want to say yes, it's better to let a man propose. As Li Junsheng spoke, he kissed the corner of her lips. However, I'm very honored to be proposed to by Chairman Yi. Yi Zhen was just impulsive for a moment. After the impulse, she didn't have the courage to say it a second time. She buried her head in his chest with a slightly red face and listened to his heartbeat. She felt that all the grievances and troubles from before seemed to have disappeared without a trace. Silly girl. His girl really made him love and pity her. Let's go inside and take a look. Think about what needs to be changed and what you're not satisfied with. Look back, except for what you want to keep. We'll redecorate it together. Yi Zhen smiled sweetly at him. Okay. In the Yi family's villa, Yi Ningen looked at Yi Nanshan with a pleading look in her eyes. Dad, please save Mom. How could Mom kill someone? Dad, this must be done by that B*TCH, Yi Zhen. She wants to harm my mom. Dad, hurry up and think of a way. Dad, why aren't you saying anything? Mom has been arrested. How can you still be so calm? Dad, how could Yi Nanshan be in the mood to care about Chenwan? He was so annoyed these past few days. After the court's ruling, he could only keep 5% of the shares. What did this mean? This meant that he was not even as good as a small shareholder. How could he take this lying down? How could he be willing to give so many shares to Yi Zhen? However, he asked Lawyer Ding. Lawyer Ding said that even if he appealed again, the result would probably be the same. This made Yi Nanshan very annoyed. When he heard Yi Ninggen's words, he was even more annoyed. Enough. Stop arguing. Dad? What's the use of calling me? It's your mom who poisoned you. Since she did this, she naturally has to pay the price. Yi Ningen looked at Yi Nanshan in a daze. She almost couldn't believe that these words came out of his mouth. Dad, what are you talking about? Aren't you thinking of a way to save Mom now? How? How? Yi Nanshan finally reacted. That damned girl Yizhen's backer was too powerful. Li Junsheng was the mayor of a city. At that time, he was careless and shed all pretense of cordiality. If he endured it for a while, Dad? Yi Ninggen's eyes were red. She rarely looked so pitiful. Yi Nanshan didn't have time to pay attention to her. He planned to look for Lawyer Ding again to see if there was any other way. No matter what, he definitely wouldn't give all the company's shares to Yizhen. Yi Ningen sat in the living room. She hugged her shoulders, and her eyes were gloomy. Yi Nanshan's reaction made her realize one thing. If she wanted to save her mother now, she could only rely on her. She took out her phone and made a few calls. Then, she got up and went out. Mom, don't worry. I'll definitely save you. I won't let that *tch Yizhen continue to be complacent. When Yizhen woke up, her waist was a little sore. Last night, Li Junsheng was especially enthusiastic. She blinked her eyes. The different feeling under her body made her realize that the place under her body didn't seem to be the bed at home. The feeling of shaking made her open her eyes instantly. Only then did she realize that she was actually in the car. She fell asleep in the back seat of the car, her head resting on Li Junsheng's lap. Seeing that she was awake, he put down the document in his hand. You're awake? Yes. Yizhen sat up. Where are we going? She was so sleepy that she didn't even know that Li Junsheng had carried her into the car. She was really too careless. Back to Rong City. Li Junsheng pulled her body into his arms. A few days ago, because of the court hearing, I didn't go home for the Mid-Autumn Festival. My mom missed you very much. She called me several times to ask about you. Yizhen didn't say anything. Last time, Li Junsheng almost got into an accident. After she contacted Mother Li once, the two sides contacted each other more often. Mother Li always suspected that Li Junsheng couldn't take care of her well. She asked him several times to take her back to Rong City. She had been tortured by Li Junsheng yesterday, and her waist was still a little sore. She relaxed her body and leaned all her weight on him. It's not good to go back empty-handed. Let's go pick some gifts later. It's okay. I'm ready. Li Junsheng pinched her cheek. Don't worry. My parents won't care about these empty gifts. Yizhen half closed her eyes and listened to him speak above her head. Lawyer Tang called you this morning. I saw that you were too tired, so I answered the phone for you. Huh? What did he say? He said that Yi Nanshan probably won't hand over the shares so easily. He's looking for Lawyer Ding and some lawyers from other cities to appeal again. Let him go. Yi Zhen was now confident. I don't believe that he will win. As she spoke, she glanced at Li Junsheng. After all, I still have you. Yes. Yi Zhen's trust made Li Junsheng feel very good. However, he said, but there's something I still have to tell you first. What? It's true that he will appeal again. Even if he appeals again, the original verdict may be upheld. But this way, it will take a long time for you to completely take control of the company. It's okay. Yizhen shook her head. I don't mind. After Yi Nanshan's matter was exposed, Ling Xian and Li Junsheng secretly guided the wind. The whole incident was almost one-sided. Especially after Chen Wan was arrested, no one would stand on Yi Nanshan's side. Some companies that were originally going to cooperate with the company but had to suspend their cooperation because of Yi Zhen's unfilial post came looking for them again. After all, there would always be some disgust to cooperate with a person with a bad character like Yi Nanshan. But Yi Zhen was different. It didn't matter who he cooperated with. If he cooperated with Yi Zhen, he could still give Yi Zhen face. In fact, although Li Junxing appeared in a low-key manner that day, and people could watch the trial but were not allowed to take photos, there were still people who saw Li Junxing's figure in the blurry photos that were leaked out. Those who could survive in the business world were all shrewd people. After asking around in private, some things were not covered up. It was Li Junxing who clearly wanted everyone to know. He was the one who asked someone to delete the posts that were unfavorable to Yi Zhen. Later, when the posts that were favorable to Yi Zhen were pushed up, it was also his doing. Then, Li Junxing appeared in court hand in hand with Yi Zhen without any hesitation. The meaning behind this was self-evident. This was also Li Junxing's goal. He would never let anyone bully his little girl again. No matter what. After Yi Nanshan's accident, there would definitely be turmoil in the company. Those people could ignore the little girl, but they would definitely give him face. If he said that he was taking advantage of the situation, then so be it. He wanted to stand up for his little girl. No matter what Yi Nanshan does, he can forget about swallowing those shares. Don't worry. If he didn't follow the court's decision, Li Junxing had a way to make him spit it out. Leaving him 5% was already his last compromise. If he was willing to be honest, naturally nothing would happen. If he was unwilling, Yi Nanshan had been smart all these years. Li Junxing didn't believe that he had a way to deal with him. Yi Zhen heard the domineering tone in his words. She reached out and wrapped her arms around his waist, rubbing her little face against his body. With you here, I'm very relieved. She realized that in front of him, she really seemed to have become a little girl. She wanted to act coquettishly and softly. Uncle Li, thank you. Silly girl. A faint smile appeared in Li Junxing's eyes. If he really wanted to thank someone, he had to thank Yi Zhen. If it wasn't for the appearance of such a girl, he wouldn't have known that one day, he would also have such a state of mind. He wanted to hold her in the palm of his hand and give her the best in the world. He wanted to let her know that no matter what the outside world was like, as long as he was there, he would protect her peace. Yi Ningen went to the detention center to see Chen Wan. The verdict hadn't been announced yet. Chen Wan wasn't in prison, but in the detention center. She brought a lawyer with her, so she would allow people to visit her. In the process, she asked the lawyer to leave for a while and chatted with Chen Wan alone for about 20 minutes. When she left the detention center, there was already a smile on her face. Chen Wan had painstakingly built up her business for many years. How could she not have left some backup? She knew that Chen Wan would definitely have a way to save herself. But before that, she had to think of a way to get rid of Yi Zhen. Everything was Yi Zhen's doing. If it weren't for her, how could the company have changed owners? How could Dad only recognize the shares and not the people? It was all Yi Zhen's fault. It was her. Everything was her fault. Yi Ningen got into the car, her eyes filled with ruthlessness. After Yi Zhen knew the possible outcome of the verdict, she let herself relax. She stayed in Rong City with Li Junxing for 2 days and had a rather relaxing and warm holiday. Mother Li liked her very much. When she saw her, she kept saying that she had lost weight. She was thinking of ways to nourish her. She was also worried that she wouldn't know how to take care of herself, so she said that she wanted to pick 2 people from the Li family to go to Qing City to take care of her. Yi Zhen politely declined. Qing City had already hired a nanny, so why would Mother Li need to worry about such trivial matters? Her mother died early, so she rarely interacted with female elders. After spending a long time with Mother Li, she actually found the feeling of being with Lu Hui. After all, Lu Hui and Mother Li were very similar in some aspects. They were both from good backgrounds, and their manners were top-notch. She also went to see the twins of the Hua family. Now that they were a little older, the more she looked at them, the cuter they became. Su Qingsang knew that Hu Jinyao was on good terms with Li Junsheng. Seeing the envy in her eyes, she teased her and asked her to have a pair as well. Yizhen blushed a little. She didn't dare to think about having a pair. However, it was still possible to have one. Li Junsheng was good-looking, and she wasn't bad either. She wondered what their child would look like. That night, for the first time, when Li Junsheng asked for it, she was even more enthusiastic than before. In fact, she knew that she was still young and wasn't ready to be a mother. However, when she saw the pink and snow-white baby, she felt that it would be a wonderful thing if she could have such a pair of twins. However, Li Junsheng didn't lose his head because of her enthusiasm. He didn't skip a single step in taking precautions. Yizhen couldn't tell how she felt. She knew that Li Junsheng didn't let her get pregnant and have children so early to protect her. However, she began to think about whether she could choose a time to tell Li Junsheng about it next time. She actually wanted to have children with him. 2 days of vacation wasn't enough. However, there would be plenty of time in the future. There would always be opportunities. After returning to Qing City, some cooperation projects were put on the agenda again, and some companies also took the initiative to extend olive branches. Yizhen began to become busy. Yinanshan's application for an appeal and the matter of a new sentence had also been settled. Yizhen was not afraid at all. The painting company would definitely be back in her hands sooner or later. She wasn't afraid at all. On the day before the trial, Yizhen had a few plans that she hadn't finished reading. She had to stay and work overtime. Chute had something to do today and said that she had to leave first. She left a small secretary in the secretary's office with the surname Jiang to help her. Yizhen didn't need much help from Xiao Jiang. After asking her to order 2 lunchboxes for herself, she let Xiao Jiang go. She could have let Zhao Li handle this matter, but Zhao Li's mission was to protect her, not to be her secretary. She and Zhao Li finished the 2 lunchboxes each. Zhao Li took the initiative to clean up the 2 lunchboxes. Yizhen took out the documents and continued to read them, but she heard a soft sound from outside. Confused, she quickly went outside. Just as she left the office, she saw Zhao Li in the corridor. He seemed to have fallen and was lying there motionless. Yizhen was shocked. She wanted to go forward, but her legs suddenly went soft. It was at this moment that she was hit hard on the back of her neck. Her vision went black and she completely lost consciousness. Soon, Yizhen and Zhao Li were no longer in the corridor. The entire process was very fast. In addition, it was time to get off work. Other than the people who stayed behind to work overtime, the entire office building was terrifyingly quiet. Chapter 8:10. When Yizhen woke up, she felt very uncomfortable. She had a splitting headache, and her limbs felt like they were tied up, which made her feel very uncomfortable. She opened her eyes to see what was going on, but the feeling of her limbs being tied woke her up. She had actually been kidnapped. Yizhen struggled to sit up and looked at the environment in front of her. It was very dark, and there was no moon, so she couldn't see clearly. A strong wind blew, and Yizhen felt the trembling under her. She also saw where she was. This seemed to be an abandoned construction site. She didn't see anyone, and she was placed on a crane in a construction site. As long as she moved, her body would fall. Yizhen took a deep breath. She tried to sit up, but she didn't dare to move too much. She was afraid that if she moved too much, she would die. The night wind was cold, and Qing City, which had already passed the Mid-Autumn Festival, was chilly. She was in the office just now, and she was only wearing a white shirt. This will be blown by the wind, her body curled up. She was still thinking about who wanted to deal with her when her body was already swaying a few times from the wind. The mechanical crane under her swayed along with it. With a bang, a strong light suddenly appeared in front of her. The light shone from the high ground of the construction site next to her and hit her face. Yijin suddenly saw the light and narrowed her eyes. When she reacted, she realized that there was a person sitting in the crane operation car. She couldn't see the person's figure clearly against the light, but the crane under her began to move. The huge swing almost made Yijin's body slide down. She had no choice but to grab the crane under her tightly. Unfortunately, it was especially difficult for her to do this with her hands tied. She could feel the pain in her fingers. It wasn't easy for her to stabilize herself, but the crane swung in another direction. She was swung and almost fell. An uncontrollable scream escaped. When the crane shook more and more violently, Yijin tried her best to calm herself down. She looked at the figure in the operation room. "Who are you? Who are you? Come out." There was no reply from the person in the operation room. Instead, the crane swayed in the opposite direction. Yijin's body was almost thrown out again. She clenched her fists until they hurt. Her face was pale, and her legs were weak. She didn't have acrophobia, but in such a situation, anyone would be afraid. The arm kept swaying, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right. Yijin was starting to feel dizzy. His hand was unable to hold on to the arm anymore. Just when she thought she would be thrown off the arm, it finally stopped. The lights dimmed, and the sudden darkness made her unable to see anything again. When she finally adapted to the darkness, the light was turned on again, and the crane began another round of swaying. Yijin was on the verge of vomiting. This feeling made her very uncomfortable. The repeated torment made her certain of one thing. The other party was here to torment her and didn't want her to have an easy time. She was only 30% suspicious at first, but now it had become 70% suspicious. She exerted her strength and grabbed onto the arm of the crane as it swayed. She raised her eyes to meet the dazzling light. "Yi Ningen, are you a child? Using such a childish method to deal with me?" The crane suddenly stopped. With her back to the light, she couldn't see what was going on inside, but it didn't affect her judgment. "What? Your mother is in prison. Do you think it's my fault and want to take revenge on me? Yi Ningen, why are you so stupid? Aren't you afraid of being thrown into prison too?" "That's true. Your mother is in prison, and you're in prison too. It'll be nice for the two of you to have company." Her voice was a little weak. No matter how brave she was, being hung high in the air and constantly swaying made her nauseous and uncomfortable. Mother and daughter in prison together. Speaking of which, it's really a wonderful story. Shut up. The person sitting in the crane finally spoke. It was a sharp voice that didn't sound like her usual sweet voice. Who else could it be but Yi Ningen? Her figure was hidden in the light and couldn't be seen clearly, but her voice sounded very exasperated. "Yijin, you be *tch. All you have left now is a battle of words. I really want to know if you can survive if I throw you down from here." This building was half-built, but it was an unfinished building that had been stopped due to quality problems. It had been abandoned for a long time. She spent a lot of effort today to get someone to bring the crane over and hoist Yijin up. Tell me, it was just a rotation of 30 degrees. What's the point? I'll rotate 360 degrees and see if you can still hold on, Yijin. Yijin had just managed to grab the crane with great difficulty. She didn't expect the crane to suddenly rotate again. This time, she couldn't hold it firmly and her body flew out. The moment she fell, she thought she was going to die. The sudden tightness on her feet and the congested blood in her head made her realize that she was tied to the arm by Yi Ningen. Her heels were tied to the crane, so she couldn't fall for the time being. However, her body was suspended in the air with her head down and her feet up. Yijin, who was already nauseous, felt even more uncomfortable and almost vomited. Ha 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 ha. The crane finally stopped, but Yijin was still swaying in the air. Yi Ningen was very proud and looked at Yijin. "Tsk, how is it? The feeling of hanging upside down isn't bad, right? Do you want to come down?" Yijin couldn't answer her question at all. Her whole body was dizzy and she felt very uncomfortable. Yi Zhen, you deserve this? Yi Zhen swayed uncomfortably. The night wind was strong and cold, and her body was trembling. She finally stabilized herself. She gritted her teeth and looked at Yi Ningen above her. Yi Ningen, I think you really want to go to jail. Don't worry, I won't go to jail. I didn't do anything to you. I'm just playing a game with you. Crazy. Yes, I'm crazy. It's all because of you. Yi Nanshan's shares were only left with 5%. Now, in order to keep his shares, he didn't even care about his wife. And Chen Wan was in the detention center. The biggest possibility was that she would go to jail. Without the identity of the Yi family's eldest daughter, without Chen Wan's support, she really didn't know how to live a dignified life in Qing City. She didn't hate Yi Nanshan. Instead, she hated Yi Zhen. If she hadn't been so ruthless, how could she have ended up like this? Yi Zhen, are you feeling very uncomfortable now? Do you really want to come up? Yi Zhen didn't speak. The feeling of blood rushing to her head was very bad, not to mention that her body didn't stop swaying. Beg me. Yi Ningen smiled proudly. Yi Zhen, beg me. Maybe I'll pull you up. What do you think? Yi Zhen didn't care about her at all. She just tried to fight against the cold wind, tried to stabilize her body, and didn't let her continue to sway. Yi Zhen, tell me, if I keep you hanging here for 3 days and 3 nights, what will you do? Yi Ningen didn't need Yi Zhen's answer. She just wanted to say the words in her heart. Or, we can talk about a condition. Yi Zhen, as long as you give up on pursuing Dad, don't ask him for those shares, and obediently transfer your shares to me, I'll pull you up. What do you think? Yi Zhen was dizzy, but she still heard Yi Ningen's words. She sneered, ignoring the discomfort of being hung upside down, and looked at Yi Ningen. You want the company's shares? Why? Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have? She spoke very slowly and with great difficulty. But in terms of momentum, she absolutely wouldn't admit defeat. Yi Ningen. It's not your own credit that you can bring me here today, right? Let me think, who helped you? Chen Liang? No, it's not him. He's being troubled now, and I'm afraid he can't take care of himself. So, it's the person your mother found? She didn't guess Yi Nanshan not because she trusted Yi Nanshan's character, but because she clearly knew. Yi Nanshan's means would only be much simpler and more violent than this. Only a perverted person like Yi Ningen could come up with such a sinister way to torment her. I heard that when your mother was in the civilian area before, she recognized a lot of brothers. Now it seems that the person who helped you tie me up here and hang me up should be your cheap uncle, right? The words were intermittent, but Yi Ningen heard it clearly. Her face was distorted. She operated the arm and began to swing in the air again. Yi Zhen's body swayed with the arm again. It was not that she was not afraid, but that she knew it was useless to be afraid. Her body was very uncomfortable, and the constantly swaying arm made her feel like vomiting again. But the more it was like this, she forced herself to calm down. Am I right? Are you guilty? Yi Ningen, which cheap uncle of yours helped you to tie me up? I'm wrong. Maybe it's not a cheap uncle, but a cheap father. Yi Zhen, I'm going to kill you. Yi Ningen was provoked to lose control. Her hands kept operating the arm, constantly swaying back and forth. Yi Zhen was uncomfortable from the swaying and was about to vomit. The rope tied to her feet seemed to loosen at this time. This time, Yi Zhen was really scared. Just when she thought she was going to be thrown out and fall, the crane stopped. Yi Ningen looked at the constantly swaying Yi Zhen, and her face was sinister. Yi Zhen, what's wrong? Are you still not going to let go? Are you sure you really want to hang here forever? She got up and left the operation room, looking at Yi Zhen from afar. Yi Zhen, if you don't want to die, obediently agree to my conditions. I can let you come up now and let you live. How about it? Yi Zhen was really uncomfortable. She looked at Yi Ningen, who was against the light, and finally agreed. Yi Ningen, even if you want me to agree to your conditions, you have to let me go first, right? Don't worry. As long as you agree and sign, I promise to let you go. Yi Ningen didn't really want to take Yi Zhen's life. She didn't want to go to jail. However, she really wanted to vent her anger. That was why she came up with such a move to deal with Yi Zhen. Then let me go up first. Yi Zhen knew what Yi Ningen was thinking, and she also knew that she wouldn't let her go so easily. The arm swayed again, and then the rope kept sliding down. Her body slowly fell. Seeing that she was about to hit the ground, she lowered her head and tried to move her body up, letting her back land first. Her body was put down, but she still felt very uncomfortable. The feeling of losing control of her body and being constantly swayed up and down, left and right, was really terrible. She slept on the mud and didn't move, letting the dizziness pass. Footsteps approached her. Yi Ningen walked in front of her and looked down at her wretched state. Yi Zhen, I'll untie one of your hands now. Sign this document, and I'll let you go. If you don't sign. Don't think that I'm the only one on this construction site. If you don't sign it, I don't mind hanging you up again. Yi Zhen's eyes were closed. She glanced at the construction site from the corner of her eyes. She didn't see anyone else, but she knew that what Yi Ningen said was true. She had spent so much effort to get her here, so she definitely wouldn't let her go easily. She narrowed her eyes and looked at Yi Ningen. Because she hadn't recovered from the dizziness, her body was still curled up in one place. How do I know that you'll let me go if I sign it? I said, I don't want to go to jail. Yi Ningen took out the document from her back. As long as you sign this document, I'll definitely let you go. Yi Zhen didn't speak and looked at the document. I have to see what's in it, right? What? You want to stall for time? Wait for your Mayor Li to come and save you? Yi Ningen suddenly smiled. I may have to disappoint you, but your Mayor Li is not free now. What did she mean? Before I brought you here, I used a trick to transfer your Mayor Li away. So, he is now on the way to the airport. Maybe he has already boarded the plane. If you wait for him to come and save you, I advise you not to waste your time. Yi Zhen pursed her lips into a straight line. Okay, help me up so that I can sign it. Wouldn't it be better if you did this earlier? But let me tell you, don't try to play tricks. I still have brothers outside. Yi Zhen didn't speak. She tried to sit up, looked at Yi Ningen, and motioned for her to untie her. Yi Ningen got a positive answer and was sure that she couldn't play tricks anymore. She squatted down in front of her. She loosened the rope binding Yi Zhen's hands. Of course, she only loosened the rope on her hands. Okay, sign it. Yi Zhen didn't take the document. She reached out to untie the rope on her feet, but a knife suddenly appeared on her neck. What? Do you think I'll believe you? Yi Ningen smiled coldly. Yi Zhen, I've said it before. Don't play tricks. This is the suburbs, and everyone outside is my people. You'd better be smart and sign it, otherwise. She pressed the knife against her neck. Believe it or not, I'll take your life. You can't escape even if you kill me. I don't need to escape. Who can prove that I killed you? Yi Zhen looked at the knife and finally nodded. Okay, I'll sign it. That's right. Chapter 8:11. Yi Zhen's hit was very hard, and she found a good angle to hit, just hitting Yi Ningen's abdomen. It wasn't that she wasn't afraid of the knife in her hand, but she realized something when she saw the knife. Yi Ningen had never thought about letting her live from beginning to end. She had always wanted herself to die. Even if she signed, it would be useless. If she really signed, she would die faster. Yi Ningen didn't expect that Yi Zhen could still fight back at this time. Caught off guard, she took a big step back, and the knife in her hand fell to the ground. It was at this time that Yi Zhen picked up the knife. Ignoring the dizziness of her body and the fact that her feet were still tied, she pressed the knife against Yi Ninggen's neck. She had just swayed for a long time, and now her body was weak. After doing this, her whole body was trembling. Yi Zhen, what are you doing? What am I doing? Yi Zhen sneered. She endured the discomfort of her body and pressed the knife against it. What you wanted to do to me just now, I want to do to you now. You what? Your mother is in prison, but didn't she teach you a lesson? Yi Zhen said quite rudely, the daughter of a mistress can't be shown in public. Even her methods are exactly the same. As she spoke, she pressed the knife in her hand a little deeper. The sharp blade cut a wound on Yi Ninggen's neck. Yi Zhen, don't you dare. If you kill me, you can't escape, Yi Ninggen shouted. Come in, kill her, kill her. Yi Zhen wasn't afraid at all. If someone died, Yi Ninggen would die first. There was the sound of messy footsteps outside. There was also the sound of a car engine approaching. Yi Ninggen laughed. Ha ha ha, did you hear that? My helper is here. If you really dare to kill me, you won't get any benefits. I'll tell you. You'll die too. However, the person who rushed in didn't attack Yi Zhen as she thought. A tall figure came forward and picked Yi Zhen up, taking the knife away from her hand. The rope around her legs was untied, and her body was firmly held in the person's arms. That familiar cool aura made Yi Zhen, who had been tensed up, relax. Her body went limp and she leaned weakly into Li Juansheng's arms. You're here? There were sirens, engines, and voices behind her, but she couldn't hear them at all. There was only Li Juansheng in front of her, only this embrace in front of her. I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm late. Li Juansheng hugged her tightly and pressed his chin against her neck. The rims of his eyes were hot. The feeling of regaining what she had lost made her heart skip a beat. I'm sorry. Sorry. Yi Zhen shook his head. Just now, he had been holding on by sheer will. If the people outside were really Yi Ninggen's accomplices, she would really be dead. After all, she was not as ruthless as Yi Ninggen and could not really kill people. Uncle Li, I'm here. I'm here. Don't let her go. Yi Zhen was really dizzy. She had been holding on until now. She's so bad. She hung me there and swung me around. Uncle Li, I'm scared to death. I'm really scared. Li Juansheng's heart ached. He hugged Yi Zhen tightly in his arms. Don't be afraid, don't be afraid. It's okay. It's okay. She even deliberately put me on the ground. I'm really dizzy. I'm so tired. My hands hurt, and my feet hurt. She still wants to kill me. Uncle Li, she wants to kill me. No, she won't. No, she won't. With me here, she won't be able to hurt you at all. Uncle Li, Yi Zhen finally couldn't hold on anymore. She began to close her eyes. Zhao Li, and Zhao Li, Uncle Li, you have to save. Zhen. Zhen. Li Juansheng had never tasted such a feeling before. He hugged Yi Zhen tightly and flew outside. In his familiar arms, Yi Zhen allowed herself to completely lose consciousness. Before Li Juansheng got into the car, he looked at Yi Ninggen, who was being held upside down by her hands. His eyes were extremely cold. He looked at Secretary Chen, and a flash of ruthlessness appeared on his face. Don't send her to the police station so quickly. Since she likes to hang people, let her have a taste of that. Secretary Chen's lips moved. He wanted to say that this wasn't appropriate. However, when he saw Li Juansheng's expression, he swallowed the rest of his words. After Li Juansheng finished explaining, he hurriedly took Yi Zhen to the hospital. He asked the doctor to do a detailed examination on her and confirmed that Yi Zhen was fine. She had just been hung for too long and had some symptoms of dehydration. Li Juansheng saw the red marks on Yi Zhen's wrists and ankles. He exuded a murderous aura. He called Secretary Chen and asked him to tell Chief Chen not to bring Yi Ninggen to the police station without hanging her for the whole night. He wanted to stand up for his little girl. Even if he would be criticized, he couldn't care less. Yijin slept all the way until the next morning before waking up. When she opened her eyes, she immediately saw Li Junsheng guarding her bedside. "Uncle Li?" Just as she was about to get up, Li Junsheng had already helped her up. "Don't be in a hurry to get up. You're still very weak." He took the warm water from the side and carefully fed it to her. Then, he placed the pillow behind her waist for her to lean against. "How are you? Do you feel better?" Yijin blinked her eyes and remembered what happened before she fainted. "Uncle Li, Yi Ningen, she was arrested." Li Junsheng's expression didn't look good when he thought of Yi Ningen. "Yesterday, I had someone hang her for the whole night and sent her to the police station this morning. Don't worry, she won't be able to escape the charge of intentional murder." Yijin nodded. "Last night, Yi Ningen did want to kill her. However, Uncle Li, how is Zhao Li?" "She's fine. She was knocked unconscious and thrown by the side of the road. It's also because she has a good foundation and woke up early. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to find you so quickly." Li Junsheng felt a lingering fear when he mentioned it. Aren't you going on a business trip?" "No. Yi Ningen lied to you." Li Junsheng placed her hand in his and squeezed it tightly. "I've been in Qing City. She lied to you on purpose." Yijin understood that Yi Ningen had been lying from beginning to end. But how did she do it?" The little secretary in your company's secretary office, the one who ordered lunch boxes for you, is Chen Wan's person." "What?" Yijin's eyes widened. She couldn't believe her ears. How is that possible? She thought that after she entered the company, she had almost cleaned up the company in the past month. Also, how did Chen Wan interfere with the company's internal affairs? "Calm down." Li Junsheng squeezed her hand and told her what had happened. That day, Yi Ningen went to see Chen Wan. Chen Wan was accused of murder and knew that she wouldn't be able to get out easily. However, the biggest problem in this matter was Yijin. Chen Wan knew that even if she couldn't get out, she had to drag Yijin down with her. It was true that she had lived a pampered life for many years, but before Chen Wan married Yi Nanshan, she had lived in the bungalow area of Qing City for more than 10 years. In those 10 years, in order not to lose both ends, Chen Wan secretly slept with Yi Nanshan, but at the same time, she hooked up with another man. At first, that man was just a hooligan. Later, he climbed up to a branch of the Zhan family and slowly developed his own power. Chen Wan was good-looking, gentle, and good at catering to people. In the days without Yi Nanshan, Chen Wan relied on that man and lived a good life. This was also the reason why Chen Wan was able to live a good life before she married into the Yi family. When Li Junsheng investigated the cause of Lu Hui's death, he found out that Chen Wan had this clue. He even had reason to suspect that Lu Hui's death might have been caused by this man. After she married Yi Nanshan, Chen Wan rarely interacted with this man. Firstly, Chen Wan wanted to be a noble lady and wished she could erase all the bad times in the past. Secondly, she didn't want Yi Nanshan to have even the slightest suspicion of her. Later on, the situation in the Zhan family was turbulent. The head of the family changed from Zhan Lai to Zhan Haoze. The branch of the Zhan family that the man was attached to could no longer be attached to, but he still had a foundation. This time, Chen Wan was also anxious. Firstly, she was afraid that she would really go to jail. At that time, Yi Ningen and Yi Jinhao would have no one to rely on. Secondly, she was also afraid that Yi Nanshan would lose the lawsuit again. At that time, most of the shares would fall into Yijin's hands. Then what would her children get? After thinking about it, Chen Wan decided to let Yi Ningen contact that man again and take the risk to kill Yijin. Of course, before killing Yijin, she had to make her sign the agreement to transfer the shares. As soon as Yijin signed the agreement, that man's subordinates would kill Yijin. At that time, the body would be casually thrown away and an accident would happen. Without anyone noticing. No. Yijin recovered now. She wasn't seriously injured. Why did that man listen to Chen Wan so much? You have to know that this is a crime of murder. What if she was caught? Besides, that man had been hiding it and never appeared. Why did he agree when Chen Wan begged him? There's another reason why that man helped Chen Wan. Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen. There were some things that he wouldn't know if he didn't really investigate carefully. What reason? He's Yi Jinhao, the biological father of your cheap brother. Yi Zhen almost choked on her own saliva. How is that possible? Is Chen Wan crazy? She's not crazy. Li Junxing thought about the information he had found and then thought of Yi Nanshan, who knew nothing about it. He couldn't help but sneer. When she was with brother Lin, that man, Lin's business wasn't going well. For a period of time, Lin's business was not going well and he needed a large sum of money. Chen Wan came up with an idea. She told brother Lin that most of his business was shady. But he couldn't do it openly like Yi Nanshan. Then she got pregnant. It was brother Lin's child. She told brother Lin that she was going to marry Yi Nanshan with the child in her stomach. Yi Nanshan valued boys more than girls. Although he said he loved his daughter, he always wanted a son. But after your mother gave birth to you, her health deteriorated and she devoted herself to work. So she didn't get pregnant again. Yi Nanshan still wanted a son. Chen Wan knew about this, so she used the child in her stomach to make Yi Nanshan force Lu Hui to divorce. But no matter how much Yi Nanshan wanted a son, he knew some things. If Lu Hui divorced him, he would probably get half of the family property. He didn't want to. So he never agreed. That Chen Wan originally wanted your father to kill your mother, but she didn't. But she was afraid that Yi Nanshan would think she was vicious, so she didn't mention it in front of him. Speaking of which, Chen Wan was indeed amazing. She had always maintained her image of a white lotus in front of your father. After that, brother Lin gave her the idea to poison your mother. So they found Wang Chunhua. They gave Wang Chunhua a large sum of money to treat her man and drug your mother at the same time. Wang Chunhua was stupid and didn't know much. In the end, she agreed. At this point, Li Junxing looked at Yi Zhen's dumbfounded expression and sighed. He pulled her into his arms again. After your mother was poisoned, Chen Wan knew that her chance had come. That's why she wanted to get pregnant so that she could marry your father. Speaking of which, she wasn't stupid. She knew that if this was true, it would be easy to deal with. So she kept your father and brother Lin at the same time. In the end, Chen Wan got pregnant and Lu Hui died of a serious illness. She used this child to successfully marry Yi Nanshan. It was true that the child was brother Lin's. Brother Lin knew that his son would become the young master of a rich family in the future, so he agreed to Chen Wan's request and stopped seeing her. Just like that, Chen Wan used a child to marry Yi Nanshan. Yi Zhen was already stunned. She didn't expect such a turn of events. Then, what about Yi Ningen? She is indeed your father's daughter. Have you forgotten? You did a paternity test on her and your father before. Yi Zhen also remembered this. She nodded. She remembered that she only knew that Yi Nanshan had an affair with Chen Wan last time, but she didn't ask Yi Nanshan and Yi Jinhao to do a paternity test. Now it seemed that Chen Wan had lied to Yi Nanshan. My father still doesn't know, right? Yes. Li Junxing curled his lips and couldn't hide the mockery in his expression. He's still trying to find a lawyer to appeal again. Also, he doesn't know that Chen Wan lied to him. Now, he doesn't know what happened to Yi Ningen yesterday. Heh. Yi Zhen didn't know what to feel at this moment. Yi Nanshan wanted a son, but the child that Chen Wan gave birth to wasn't his. She wondered if Yi Nanshan would regret it after he found out. Chen Wan went to the detention center, but your father didn't do anything. Your father is really cold. Yi Zhen suddenly retreated from Li Junxing's arms. She retreated and stared into Li Junxing's eyes. There was one thing that she insisted on an answer. Does Yi Nanshan have anything to do with my mother's death? Yi Nanshan didn't care about Chen Wan's life at all. He could be cold to Chen Wan now, but was it possible that he was the same to Lu Hui back then? Perhaps he was also behind Lu Hui's death. I've already checked. It shouldn't be related. Li Junxing was speechless when he thought of his future father-in-law. Even if it wasn't related, Lu Hui's death at Chen Wan's hands could be considered as his indirect death. Are you sure? It would be best if it wasn't related. She was afraid that it was related. I'm sure it isn't. Li Junxing gave her an affirmative answer. You know, if he was really involved, he should be a little nervous about Chen Wan going to prison. Yi Zhen was silent. Although this outcome wasn't within her expectations, it was still reasonable. Chen Wan will be guilty, right? Yes. Yi Ningen will also be guilty. Right? Of course. Yi Zhen nodded. What she needed was Li Junxing's encouragement and a positive answer. I want to leave the hospital. I want to look for Yi Nanshan. If you want to do anything, tell me. I'll do it. Rest well. I think you're very weak. I'm fine. It was just that she had been hung for too long yesterday, and she had gotten a fright. She was fine now. Maybe I'm petty. Yi Zhen's lips curled into a mocking smile. If he didn't try his best to be with my mother wouldn't have died. It's a fact that he cheated and betrayed my mother. Now, he still has to fight for some shares. He values boys more than girls. All he wants is to give the company and the shares to Yi Jinhao, my cheap younger brother. I really want to know how he will deal with himself after he finds out that Yi Jinhao isn't his son. How will he face Chen Wan and Yi Ningen? Uncle Li, am I very scary? Do you think I'm a very scary person? Yi Zhen realized that she didn't mind letting Li Junxing know this side of her at all. I think I'm quite vicious too. But I just can't accept it. Nonsense. Li Junxing squeezed her hand tightly. He looked at her with a pitiful expression. My Zhen isn't vicious at all. If you want him to pay the price, I'll go with you. Whether it's the company, property, or anything else, just tell me what kind of punishment you want him to get. No need. Yi Zhen shook her head. I don't want to punish him. I just want to tell him everything. I just want him to know what kind of true face the woman he once believed in and loved. Li Junxing nodded and held her hand. Are you sure you don't want to rest for a few more days? There's really no need. There was a flash of playfulness in Yi Zhen's eyes. Maybe I'll be fine after I vent my anger. Li Junxing was relieved that she could still joke. He asked Secretary Chen to complete the discharge procedures and left the hospital with her. The car approached the Yi family's villa. Yi Zhen hadn't been back here for a long time. In fact, after Lu Hui died, she didn't want to continue living here. But she couldn't leave. If she left, it would benefit Chen Wan and her daughter. After entering the door, it was the weekend. Yi Jinhao didn't go to school. At home, he was playing Transformers with the nanny. When he saw Yi Zhen coming back, he didn't even lift his eyelids. He had been taught by Chen Wan not to get close to his sister since he was young. Fortunately, she wasn't really his sister. Yi Zhen could be indifferent to people he didn't care about. Yi Ningen didn't go home for a night, but Yi Nanshan wasn't worried. Chen Wan went to prison, but he didn't seem to be worried. Honestly speaking, this man was indeed very cold. And now, this cold man was still in the study talking to Lawyer Ding about how to get the shares back. After Yi Zhen heard where he was, she went upstairs. The servants didn't dare to stop her. This young lady used to be suppressed by the madam, so she wasn't sharp. Today, she had a fierce look on her face. She actually let her walk all the way to Yi Nanshan's study. Lawyer Ding, just tell me directly what the chances of winning are to keep the shares. If you can't do it, I'll have to change lawyers. Mr. Yi, you signed the agreement yourself. It's not easy for us to keep 5% now. To be honest, even if you appeal again, I think we can only uphold the original judgment. Yi Nanshan's expression was ugly. After thinking for a moment, he said, "By the way, how confident are you in Shenwan's lawsuit?" After all, she was Yi Jinhao's biological mother. He didn't want Shenwan to suffer too much. As for Lu Hui, she was already dead. There was no evidence, so it was naturally more important to protect Shenwan first. Yi Zhen stood at the door. She was wrong. She originally thought that Yi Nanshan was cold, but now it seemed that he wasn't completely useless. After knocking on the door, Yi Nanshan was shocked. Without waiting for his permission, Yi Zhen entered the door with Li Junxing. "Why are you still here?" Yi Nanshan was angry when he saw this daughter. If it weren't for her, how could he have been pulled down from the position of chairman? How could Shenwan be in jail? How could he not get the company's shares back? Yi Zhen looked at Yi Nanshan expressionlessly. Someone squeezed her palm slightly, and the warm touch made her turn to look at Li Junxing. When she met the look in his eyes, she shook her head at him. At this point, Yi Nanshan's words and actions could no longer hurt her at all. Since she no longer regarded him as her father, then no matter what Yi Nanshan did or said, he couldn't hurt her at all. "Why can't I come?" Yi Zhen's expression was indifferent. She glanced at Lawyer Ding. "You're asking Lawyer Ding to prepare the materials for another appeal, right? But I think it's useless. Yi Zhen, get out of here. You're not welcome in this family." Yi Nanshan stood up angrily and slammed his hand on the table. "Do you think I'm willing to come just because you don't welcome me?" Yi Zhen sneered. "I'm just here to tell you a few things. After that, I'll naturally leave." She looked at Lawyer Ding, who couldn't sit still and didn't seem to want to stay any longer. "Lawyer Ding, don't be in a hurry to leave. After I finish those things, maybe Mr. Yi will need you. So don't be in a hurry to leave." "What are you trying to say?" Yi Nanshan's expression was ugly. The more he looked at this daughter, the more she looked like Lu Hui. She would only embarrass him and make him feel uncomfortable. Therefore, even though he knew that Yi Zhen had climbed up to Li Junxing and that there was no benefit in offending Yi Zhen, he still couldn't get past him. Moreover, he had already offended Li Junxing. Even if he wanted to curry favor with him now, it was too late. Therefore, Yi Nanshan's expression wasn't good. Yi Zhen turned around and looked at Li Junxing. Li Junxing handed the document bag to her. Yi Nanshan didn't understand and saw Yi Zhen hand the document to him. "What is this?" Chapter 8:12. Yi Zhen's expression was truly infuriating. Yi Nanshan stared at her face for a long time, then angrily took the documents. However, as he flipped through the pages, his expression became incomparably ugly. He grabbed the table and threw the documents in his hands onto the table. "Why, you're talking nonsense." "Am I talking nonsense, or are you blind?" Yi Nanshan panted heavily. He pointed at Yi Zhen, not wanting to believe a single word she said. "Mr. Yi, to be honest, I didn't want to tell you at first. I thought that you'd never know about this for the rest of your life. You'd treat someone else's son as your own until he's completely grown up. When you're about to die of old age, then I'll tell you. That would definitely be a special sense of accomplishment. Unfortunately, I don't want to, because I don't want Shenwan's son to benefit from it. I don't want my mother's hard-earned savings to benefit an outsider like this. Even if it's just for him to stay in this house, even if it's just for him to enjoy everything in the Yi family, even if it's only temporary, I don't want it." Yi Nanshan's face was pale. His hands were on the table, and his entire person was in a state of confusion. Yi Zhen had no intention of provoking him, but unfortunately, since Yi Nanshan had turned against her, there was not much left of the thin familial relationship between them. She didn't tell Yi Zhen that she was giving Yi Nanshan the wooden eyes out of kindness, but she had her own motives. Whether you believe it or not, it doesn't change the truth. Jinhao really isn't your child, but you can still take him for a paternity test. Of course, I won't be as bored as you to secretly tamper with it. However, I believe that this report has given you a truthful enough answer. The report Yi Zhen was talking about was the paternity test between Yi Jinhao and brother Lin. She believed that Yi Nanshan had seen it. As for whether he believed it or not, it was up to him. The paternity test was sandwiched in the pile of documents. The document contained a lot of information. Chen Wan colluded with brother Lin, and Chen Wan hired someone to poison Lu Hui. Even Wang Chunhua's 2 children were killed by Chen Wan. You're talking nonsense. You're talking nonsense. Get out of here. Get out of here. I don't want to see you. I don't want to hear it. Yi Nanshan's expression changed dramatically. He shook his head, his body trembling, unwilling to accept the truth. Yi Ningen had a sweet mouth and was good at making people happy. He liked this daughter. However, the one he valued the most was indeed Yi Jinhao. Ever since he was born, he had always treated Yi Jinhao as his successor and had been cultivating him. Who would have thought that this would be the result? Yi Zhen didn't leave. She stood there arrogantly. What? You can't accept it? Was he the one who caused all of this? Yi Nanshan was infuriated. He grabbed a pen holder from the table and was about to throw it at Yi Zhen. Li Junxing stepped forward, pulled Yi Zhen's hand, and led her to the side. The pen holder didn't manage to hit it. It was thrown against the wall and fell to the ground. Lawyer Ding didn't even know what was in the document, and his body involuntarily dodged to the side. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't. After all, Li Junxing was still there. Yi Nanshan missed. He picked up the paperweight on the table and was about to throw it again. Li Junxing quickly took 2 steps forward and grabbed his hand across the desk. Mr. Yi, if you can't accept these things, have you ever thought about whether or not Jinjin can accept it? Mr. Yi, you're angry now. If you want to flare up, you can flare up and get angry. Have you ever thought that Jinjin lost her mother at a young age? You married someone else after she lost her mother and never gave her the slightest bit of love. When she finally grew up, you, her father, sued her. What kind of feeling did you have? Jinjin's mother was killed. She lived in the same room with her enemy for more than 10 years without knowing it. What Mr. Yi is experiencing now, Jinjin has already experienced. What right do you have to blame all of this on Jinjin? Who caused these things? Could it be Jinjin? She's just removing these hypocritical masks. She wants you to see clearly that the real source of all of this is you. It's you. What right do you have? What reason do you have to blame Jinjin? All these years, have you ever fulfilled your responsibilities as a father? Have you ever cared about Jinjin at all? Don't you think it's ugly for you to put on such an attitude now? Li Junxing questioned him harshly, one sentence after another. The strength of his grip on Yi Nanshan's wrist made him loosen his hand. The paper weight fell and smashed back onto the table. Li Junxing swung his hand at the right time and let go of his hand. He turned around and returned to Yi Zhen, protecting her by his side. Mr. Yi, Jinjin has never done anything wrong to you. It's you who has always let Jinjin down. Today, Jinjin is already considered a member of our Li family. If you want to make a move, please think about it. Yi Nanshan froze there motionless and didn't recover for a long time. He looked at the document on the table and suddenly felt as if all the strength in his body had been sucked away. Yi Zhen didn't have the slightest bit of sympathy. She snuggled up to Li Junxing. Her mood was calm and unperturbed as she watched Yi Nanshan collapse. Lawyer Ding's back was soaked in sweat. He felt that he couldn't stay here for a minute, but he couldn't leave. Right now, no one cared about his thoughts. Yi Nanshan hadn't recovered from such a huge shock. Yi Jinhao downstairs was obviously tired of playing. He stomped upstairs and went straight to the study. He was used to being a tyrant at home since he was young, and Yi Nanshan pampered him. He didn't even knock on the door when he entered the study and directly rushed in. Dad, Dad. Look, this is my Transformers. Yi Jinhao was 11 years old. He was almost 1.4 meters tall. He rushed in front of Yi Nanshan with a transformer in his hand. Dad, look, Yi Nanshan, who was always patient, didn't praise his son like before. Instead, he waved his hand and hit the transformer in Yi Jinhao's hand. This sudden change startled Yi Jinhao. He stood there in a daze. Before he could react, the angry Yi Nanshan raised his foot and kicked him. Yi Jinhao wasn't prepared. He was kicked back a few steps by Yi Nanshan and fell to the ground. Before he could cry, Yi Nanshan had already stepped forward again, intending to give him 2 more kicks. Yi Jin reacted faster than him and stepped in front of Yi Nanshan. Yi Nanshan's kick missed, and his body almost fell forward. After he stabilized his body, he looked at Yi Jin, not understanding what she meant. If Yi Jin could, she didn't want to care about these trivial things. But no matter how bad Yi Jinhao was, he was still a child. Even if Chen Wan's teachings were a little crooked, even if Chen Wan taught him a little crooked, it wasn't a reason for Yi Nanshan to hit a child. Mr. Yi, now you want to kick him to death and go to jail with Chen Wan, right? I'm really happy for you. Yi Nanshan couldn't speak. He kept panting. The huge anger made his face turn red. Just now, when he saw Yi Jinhao, he really had the urge to kill him. He had spent a lot of effort on Yi Jinhao and had high hopes for him. Now, he wanted Yi Jinhao to die. Wah! Yi Jinhao cried. He got up and ran outside. Dad hit me. Dad hit me. I want to find Mom. Mom, hearing this, Yi Nanshan wanted to explode again. Yi Jin took a deep breath. She had seen enough of this pile of rubbish. Mr. Yi, if Chen Wan is convicted of murder, she will be in jail for at least 10 years. Yi Jinghan kidnapped me last night and wanted to kill me. Although I didn't die, she can't escape the charge of attempted murder. Chen Wan and Yi Jinghan are both in jail. They got the punishment they deserved. But what about your punishment? Yi Nanshan raised his head and looked at Yi Jin fiercely. Yi Jin ignored him and took Li Juanqing's hand and walked outside. The study quieted down. Lawyer Ding looked at Yi Nanshan's gloomy face and cleared his throat awkwardly. Boss Yi, it's nothing. I'll leave first. Yi Nanshan glanced at him coldly. He stood there and looked at Lawyer Ding. Tell me, what do I have to do to get rid of my father-son relationship with that bastard? Lawyer Ding had already guessed it after watching the show for a long time. But when he heard Yi Nanshan's words, he still sucked in a cold breath. Mr. Yi, are you sure? Of course, Yi Nanshan said coldly. I've raised someone else's son for so long. It's enough. Since he's not my son, then don't think about taking the position of the Yi family's young master. Lawyer Ding shrank his body. For the first time, he felt that Yi Nanshan was really ruthless. Speaking of which, he was also the child he had raised for more than 10 years, but he actually abandoned him just like that. Mr. Yi, if you don't want it, of course there's a way. Huh? Yi Jin wasn't interested in or concerned about what Yi Nanshan thought. She didn't even care if Yi Nanshan would obediently give up his shares. If Yi Nanshan decided to appeal in the end, she wouldn't be afraid. After getting rid of Chen Wan and Yi Jinghan, Yi Nanshan would know that Yi Jinhao wasn't his son. For her, that was enough. Outside the Yi family's door, the autumn sun outside was warm with a hint of warmth. She narrowed her eyes and suddenly turned around to hug Li Juanqing. Li Juanqing lowered his head to look at her. The little girl half closed her eyes and nestled in his chest. Uncle Li, I'm very happy. Huh? For so many years, I've been holding it in. I've always thought that one day, I must make my father regret it and teach Chen Wan and Yi Jinghan a lesson. Li Juanqing gently patted her back. Yi Jin suddenly became serious. Uncle Li, do you really not think that I'm vicious? I don't. Yi Jin smiled. Finally, her face revealed a little shyness. Uncle Lee, thank you. It's all because of you that I could do it so easily. Li Junsheng rubbed her hair. You would have done it without me. I know. But it won't be so fast. Yijin wasn't so blindly confident that she didn't know her limits. Maybe it will take a long time. Maybe she didn't finish her sentence. Maybe she would never find evidence of Chen Wan poisoning in her lifetime. She could only watch her get away with it. It won't. Li Junsheng was an atheist, but he really couldn't bear to see her like this. The heavenly Tao is clear. There will always be retribution. Yijin didn't say anything. She thought about the scene when she went downstairs and saw Yi Jinhao crying for his mother. What do you think my dad will do to Yi Jinhao? She didn't regret what she had done, but Yi Jinhao was just a child after all. With Yi Nanshan's cold personality, Yi Jinhao wouldn't have a good life in the future. That's not something you should worry about. Raising a child wouldn't be a loss at all. However, Yi Nanshan definitely wouldn't let Yi Jinhao continue to stay in the Yi family. Yijin also guessed it. She sighed slightly, feeling a little uncomfortable. Don't think about it. Li Junsheng held her hand and walked in the direction of the parking lot. There are some things that you and I can't control. Although I don't like him, he's just a child. My dad is a cold person, and he's not broad-minded. When I didn't know, it was naturally good. Now that I know, I'm afraid, if Yi Jinhao was sent away, the huge gap and his birth mother being imprisoned would make Yi Jinhao's life very difficult. If Yi Jinhao wasn't sent away. With Yi Nanshan's personality, his life in the Yi family would probably be quite difficult. No matter what, Yi Jinhao's ending wouldn't be good. Although he was spoiled to the point of being willful, he was still a child. Li Junsheng got into the car with her and gestured for Xiao Zhao to drive. He placed her hand in his palm. Leave these things to Brother Lin to worry about. After all, he's his son. He won't ignore it. Yi Zhen was silent and threw her body into Li Junsheng's arms. Her small hand was placed on his chest. She let him hug her tightly. Yi Zhen didn't expect Yi Nanshan to act so quickly. Chen Wan was still in the detention center. Her case wouldn't be decided until after the public prosecution. While Chen Wan was still in jail, Yi Nanshan filed another complaint against Chen Wan. The crime was marriage fraud. Yi Nanshan didn't care about the relationship between husband and wife for more than 10 years and said that Chen Wan cheated the marriage. He even submitted evidence that Yi Jinhao wasn't his child, and he had no obligation to raise someone else's child. Not only did he ask for a divorce from Chen Wan, but he also wanted to dissolve the parent-child relationship with Yi Jinhao's guardian and ward. In the end, he asked Chen Wan to compensate him for his losses. In other words, he wanted to take back all the assets that he had given to Chen Wan. When Yijin heard about this, it was Li Junsheng who told her. She had been very busy recently. The crisis of the painting company was over, and now everything was slowly on the right track. Her prestige in the company was also growing. On one hand, it was because of Li Junsheng, and on the other hand, it was because she had used the fastest time to stabilize the company's situation. Recently, the few cases had been completed quite well, and the managers were also convinced by her. When she returned to the office, she was about to ask Chu Tae to make her a cup of coffee when her phone rang. The call was from the detention center. It said that Chen Wan wanted to see her. It was only then that she found out what Yi Nanshan had done. She ignored Chen Wan's request. She said she wanted to see her, so she went to see her? Ridiculous. It was night, and when they were eating, Li Junsheng took the initiative to talk about this matter. He told Yijin what Yi Nanshan had done, and then told her that the court date was set. It was next Friday. The evidence is sufficient. Don't worry, Chen Wan will definitely be convicted. However, she might have to face more than one crime. She told her what Yi Nanshan had done, including suing Chen Wan for marriage fraud and wanting to cancel her father-son relationship with Yi Jinhao. Yi Zhen's hand that was holding the chopsticks paused for a moment. Chen Wan called me today and said that she wanted to see me. I refused. It's right not to see her. It's useless to see her. You don't have to see her. Everything she has done will be dealt with by the public prosecution. The public prosecution will find a lawyer for her. What happens next will be decided. Yi Zhen nodded with sarcasm in her eyes. She probably doesn't know that Yi Ningen is also locked up, right? She probably knows. Li Junxing scooped a bowl of soup and placed it in front of her. If she didn't know that Yi Ningen was locked up, I don't think she would have said that she wanted to see you. Does she think that I will still help her after what she has done? I think she might want you to let Yi Ningen go on account that she is your sister. Impossible. Yi Zhen wasn't a saint. No matter how kind she was, she wouldn't forgive someone who wanted to kill her. If I hadn't been vigilant that day, if you hadn't come quickly, I might have died in her hands. I won't let Yi Ningen go. Seeing that Li Junxing didn't say anything, she smiled at him. However, I don't plan to deal with her. After all, she has already been punished, and it is about to be a punishment that she can't face. Li Junxing's expression didn't relax. Instead, he said something else. By the way, you should be careful recently. Zhao Li can't leave your side at all times. There's no need, right? They're all arrested. Besides, my dad can't take my life now. Yi Nanshan was already in such a state, and he still had time to deal with her. It's not your dad. Li Junxing told her what he knew. His little girl had never been a timid person. She actually dared to counterattack Yi Ningen at such a dangerous time. It's Chen Liang. Chen Liang? Yi Zhen remembered who this person was. What happened to him? He was also involved in the kidnapping of you. But now, we've caught Brother Lin and his men. But Chen Liang ran away. Yi Zhen nodded in understanding. This Chen Liang is quite sincere to Yi Ningen. Seeing that Yi Ningen was captured, I'm afraid he will think of a way to take revenge. Yes. Isn't that perfect? Yi Zhen immediately thought of a solution. I'll use this time to lure Chen Liang out, and then, don't even think about it. Li Junxing glared at Yi Zhen, and a sharp look flashed across his eyes. Let me tell you, don't even think about using yourself as bait. I don't want to do what happened last time again. I know. Yi Zhen felt that he was really paranoid. Don't worry, I'll take good care of myself. It's not just you. I don't want to do what happened last time again. It's good that you know. Li Junxing glanced at her. Don't worry about Chen Liang. Leave it to me. I'll get them to arrest him as soon as possible. Yi Zhen was just saying it casually. With Li Junxing around, she had nothing to worry about. The time for the trial passed quickly. During this time, Chen Wan made a few requests to see her, but she ignored them. Chapter 8:13. Chen Wan was charged with murder, and she was prosecuted by the public prosecution. The lawyer was also invited by the public prosecution. Of course, Chen Wan also found a lawyer. Yi Zhen had waited so long for this day. She wanted to personally see Chen Wan receive the punishment she deserved. Chen Wan saw Yi Zhen as soon as she entered the courtroom. She looked at Yi Zhen with a venomous gaze. Yi Zhen ignored him. Soon, Yi Nanshan also arrived. In less than half a month, Yi Nanshan looked more haggard and thinner. He looked in Chen Wan's direction as soon as he entered. Yi Nanshan was looking at Chen Wan the same way Chen Wan had looked at Yi Zhen earlier. Yi Zhen sat to the side, his eyes full of mockery. Li Junxing squeezed her palm. She turned her face and smiled at him. She wasn't angry. She didn't even have a trace of emotion. She was only here to wait for a result. The trial was not open to the public because it involved Yi Nanshan's privacy. In the audience, only Yi Zhen, Li Junxing, Lu Manjiang, and Lu Zhishuan could be seen, as well as Yi Nanshan and Lawyer Ding. Of course, Yi Nanshan did not come to save Chen Wan out of the goodness of his heart. He had come here today to achieve his own goal. Yi Zhen knew, and so did Li Junsheng. No one knew how ruthless Yi Nanshan would be. The trial began, and the evidence provided by the public prosecution was very complete. Li Junsheng provided evidence for everything Chen Wan had done. How did Chen Wan get in touch with Wang Chunhua? How did she get Wang Chunhua to poison her? Of course, this part had taken too long. Chen Wan didn't admit it herself, so she could only get an answer from the examination of Lu Hui. Lu Hui's death was already Chen Wan's doing. Although the evidence was not sufficient, after all, Wang Chunhua did not know what kind of poison Chen Wan had given her. However, the deaths of Wang Chunhua's 2 children were definitely related to Chen Wan. Ever since Wang Chunhua, who had been locked up, found out that her children were harmed by Chen Wan, she had completely collapsed. He lost control of his emotions in court. He was in a state of madness. Without any hesitation, he accused Chen Wan of harming others. All the evidence was given to the court, but that was not the final result. Because Yi Nanshan still wanted to step on him. At least in Yi Nanshan's eyes, Chen Wan had cheated the marriage. If Yi Jinhao had not been born, why would Yi Nanshan have married Chen Wan? Now, he didn't want that innocent child, Yi Jinhao. Yi Nanshan demanded compensation from Chen Wan. He wanted her to divorce him and return all the property he had given her. Chen Wan was originally able to remain calm in court. But when she heard Yi Nanshan's request, she laughed exaggeratedly. Ha 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 ha. Marriage fraud? I cheated marriage? If I didn't cheat you into marrying me, would you have married me? Yi Nanshan, don't make yourself sound so noble. You said that I cheated the marriage, but aren't you the same? There was madness in her eyes, a kind of paranoia that wanted to drag everyone into hell. Why don't you think about it? You are my boyfriend. But what did you do? You married Lu Hui. You married that woman. You said that you were only doing this for expediency. You said that you were doing this for Lu Hui's family background and character. You said that I cheated the marriage, didn't you? Chen Wan's words made Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan's expressions change. No matter how cold-blooded Yi Nanshan was, he still wanted to save face. Caught off guard by Chen Wan's accusation, his face turned green. But Chen Wan refused to let him go. She was already in hell, and there was no way for her to make a comeback. Then Yi Nanshan, this hypocrite, would not be able to escape punishment. After you married Lu Hui, didn't you still keep seeing me? You keep saying that I cheated the marriage, but what about you? How much better are you than me? Yi Nanshan, don't make yourself sound so innocent and pitiful. I'm just copying you. Why can you do it, but I can't? Yi Nanshan's face turned green. Chen Wan still felt that it was not enough. The longer you are with Lu Hui, the more you don't want a divorce. You know Lu Hui's ability and means. You know that she still has a lot of value. So you treated me more and more perfunctorily. You even made me move away from my original place to that commoner's area so that Lu Hui wouldn't be suspicious. Yi Nanshan, if it wasn't for your ruthlessness, why would I betray you? Yi Nanshan almost fainted from anger. He almost couldn't control his impulses. He rushed up and wanted to strangle Chen Wan. But he was caught by Lawyer Ding. Quiet, the court looked at the agitated Chen Wan and motioned for her to calm down. But Chen Wan had already thrown everything aside. Yes. Yi Nanshan, I admit all the mistakes I've done and the retribution I have to bear. But you? Do you think you can get away with it? Shut up, you shut up. Yi Nanshan's expression was very ugly. Beside him, Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan glared at him. Not only them, but the other people in the court also looked at him with mixed feelings. Chen Wan was right. If Chen Wan was not innocent, then how could Yi Nanshan be innocent? This farce finally came to an end. Chen Wan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 20 years in prison. As for her cheating the marriage, she had to be sentenced separately. That was not a criminal case, so it was not today's topic. Chen Wan got the retribution she deserved. For Yi Zhen, this matter was considered to have come to an end. Coming out of the court, Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan glared at Yi Nanshan. They wanted to skin him alive and grind his bones to dust. Yi Nanshan knew that he had been ruined by Chen Wan's words before, so he left dejectedly with Lawyer Ding. He didn't even look at Yi Zhen. Lu Zhishuan wanted to chase after them, but Yi Zhen stopped him. She looked at Yi Nanshan's retreating figure, then at her grandfather and uncle. Grandfather, uncle, he has already received his retribution. I believe he won't have a good life for the rest of his life. Don't waste our energy and emotions on such a person. It's not worth it. Yi Nanshan had raised a son for someone else for more than 10 years. Coupled with Chen Wan's betrayal, he would not be able to accept such a thing. What would happen to Yi Nanshan was not Yi Zhen's concern. Anyway, she would get those shares back sooner or later. Although Lu Manjiang and Lu Zhishuan were angry, Lu Hui was gone. And the truth had already come to pass. Even if they were really angry and caught Yi Nanshan and beat him up, it would not change anything. They both knew that there was no point in talking. Now, as Yi Zhen said, Yi Nanshan received his retribution. After that, it was Yi Jinghan and Brother Lin's verdict. Yi Jinghan attempted murder. She was convicted and sentenced to 9 years in prison. Other than kidnapping Yi Zhen, Brother Lin had other cases on his hands. This time, he had people find out who he was guilty of. He was sentenced to 15 years. All the people who had hurt her mother, had gotten what they deserved. For Yi Zhen, this was the best news. After that, Yi Nanshan filed an appeal and dissolved his marriage with Chen Wan. This was a problem for Yi Jinhao. As Yi Jinhao's biological parents, Brother Lin and Chen Wan were supposed to be his guardians. But now, both of them were in prison. Yi Jinhao was only 11 years old and needed a guardian. If Yi Nanshan didn't want to raise him, he could only go to an orphanage. This was not a good thing for the child. The court tried to mediate but failed to change Yi Nanshan's mind. He insisted on sending the child to an orphanage. But later, for some reason, Yi Nanshan suddenly changed his mind and agreed to continue to be Yi Jinhao's guardian. When Yi Zhen heard the news, she was very surprised. How is that possible? She looked at Li Junsheng in disbelief. With Yi Nanshan's personality, it's enough to raise someone else's son for 11 years. Why would he continue raising him? Li Junsheng's expression was slightly cold. From a man's point of view, he could roughly guess. I think your father wants to torture your cheap brother, right? That's impossible, right? Yi Zhen didn't believe it. No matter what, she had raised the child by her side and doted on him for 11 years. Even if he wasn't her biological son, she still had feelings for him. How could? It's very possible. Yi Nanshan looked at Yi Zhen. She was pure by nature. Even though Yi Nanshan had treated her like that, she still had a trace of hope for him. But in reality, a person like Yi Nanshan only loved himself from beginning to end. He could betray the world, but the world could not betray him. With such a personality, it would be strange if he didn't vent his anger. Yi Zhen was a little upset. Although she didn't like Chen Wan and her mother, she also didn't like Yi Jinhao's cheap brother. But in the end, he was just a child. The child was innocent. Yi Nanshan's actions were really ungentlemanly and immoral. Don't think about it. Li Junsheng knew that her heart must have softened. This really has nothing to do with you. If you're really worried, why don't you find an opportunity to go to the Yi family and see him? There's no need to see him. Yi Zhen shook her head. Chen Wan and Yi Ninggen's mistakes were caused by them. And Yi Jinhao bore the consequences. Li Junsheng pulled her into his arms and kissed the top of her head. All right, don't think about it. There are some things that are useless even if you think about it. No matter what, Yi Nanshan is an adult man. I think he won't go too far. Really? Yizhen wasn't sure, but Li Juanxing's words more or less comforted her. She wrapped her arms around Li Juanxing's waist tightly and used this action to give herself strength. She also told herself that all of this had nothing to do with her. No matter how good Yizhen's words were and how cold she pretended to be, she still had some concerns in her heart. The company's situation gradually stabilized. Yi Nanshan didn't know what was going on, but he didn't appeal anymore. Yizhen couldn't figure out what Yi Nanshan was thinking. After meeting with the client that day, she realized that the Yi family's villa was very close. She thought about it and asked Zhao Li to drive the car to the Yi family's house. At the Yi family's house, Yi Nanshan looked at Yi Jinhao as if he was looking at an enemy. Since the end of the trial and the custody of the child was still in his hands, Yi Jinhao hadn't gone to school. He was locked up at home by Yi Nanshan. During this period of time, Yi Jinhao was extremely afraid. He was only 11 years old. He didn't understand the world of adults. He only knew that when he woke up, his mother was gone, and he lost his sister. Now, the only person he could rely on, his father, had also become frightening. Yi Nanshan wouldn't treat Yi Jinhao well. Now, looking at this bastard, he had a stomach full of anger. The anger that couldn't be vented at Chen Wan was now all directed at Yi Jinhao. You bastard, why don't you die? Yi Nanshan didn't restrain his emotions. At first, he only cursed, but later, he hit him. The man's leg strength was very strong. Yi Jinhao's small body couldn't withstand the kick and was sent flying. When Yizhen entered the door, she saw this scene in front of her. Yi Nanshan kicked Yi Jinhao's body away. Yi Jinhao fell on the wall and fell to the ground. He burst into tears, crying and calling for his father. He was still too young. He didn't understand what he had done wrong, nor did he understand why his father suddenly became like this. Dad, don't hit me, Mom, I want Mom. Sister, come quickly, I want sister. I want Mom, I want sister. The kick was very serious, and he couldn't stop crying. Yi Nanshan was getting angrier and angrier. He stepped forward to give him a second kick. Yizhen stepped forward to stop him. Enough. What are you doing here? Yi Nanshan didn't like Yizhen now. If it wasn't for her, how could these things happen? It's her fault, it's all her fault. Yizhen suppressed his temper and forced himself not to explode on the spot. Mr. Yi, I beg of you, child abuse is illegal. If you hit him now, do you want to go to prison with Chen Wan and her mother? Get out of my way. Yi Nanshan was angry. He looked at Yizhen with hostility. Isn't that what you want? You told me about this bastard's life. Didn't you want me to torture him? Why are you pretending to be a good person in front of me? Yizhen really wanted to roll her eyes if she could. She held back and forced herself to look at Yi Nanshan. I told you that day, I told you about his life because I don't want him to take over the Yi family and my mother's property. She glanced at Yi Jinhao and turned to look at Zhao Li behind her. When she was kidnapped, Zhao Li was asked to not leave her side. Especially in a place like the Yi family. Zhao Li, call the doctor and send him to the hospital. Also, call the police. You. Yi Nanshan was furious. Yizhen, what do you want now? What do I want? Yizhen forced herself to calm down. If you really can't accept it, let him go to the orphanage. Don't use this family as a place to vent your personal grievances. What does it have to do with you? It does. Yizhen looked at him seriously for the first time after entering the door. Mr. Yi, if you remember correctly, this place used to be my mother's and my home. She planted the flowers and trees in the garden outside. The decorations here are my mother's preferences. There's even my mother's memorial tablet here. Do you think she would want to see you do these things in her own house? No, she would only feel disgusted. Yi Nanshan seemed to be hit and took a step back. Yizhen didn't look at him again. She watched Zhao Li carry Yi Jinhao outside and she followed him. Chapter 8:14. The child was sent to the hospital, but Yijin didn't really call the police. After hiring an auntie to take care of Yi Jinhao, she returned home. When Li Junxing returned home, he found her sitting on the sofa in a daze again. He had already heard about Yi Jinhao. He changed his shoes and entered the door. He walked behind her and sat down, pulling her into his arms. "Are you still thinking about your cheap brother?" Yijin wasn't surprised that he knew. She turned around and looked at him with a helpless expression. "Uncle Li, do you think I'm too soft-hearted? My Zhen is just kind." Li Junxing kissed her forehead, pulled her hand, and wrapped it gently in his palm. "So be it. He can't do anything anyway." Yijin shook her head. She wasn't worried about this. Yi Nanshan is almost half crazy now. "I'm thinking that he definitely won't treat Yi Jinhao well in the future." That was for sure. She knew it, and so did Li Junxing. "You don't want to adopt him, do you? How is that possible?" Yijin shook her head. "I've been thinking about it. I think it's better to send Yi Jinhao to the orphanage. What do you think of this matter?" "Okay." Li Junxing nodded. "Are you sure your dad will agree?" Yijin wasn't sure, but she said, "If there's an equal exchange, I think my dad will agree." "What do you mean?" "Give my dad 5% of the shares in exchange for him letting go of Yi Jinhao." "Good idea. Don't you think you're at a disadvantage?" "I don't think so." Yijin blinked. At this moment, she looked extremely mischievous. "You know. Now, Yi Ningen and Chen Wan are in prison. So what if I ask him to leave 10% of the shares? Without the mother and daughter by his side, he still has some ability. And I believe that after what my dad has experienced, it's impossible for him to find another woman to marry and have children in a short period of time." Li Junxing smiled faintly. Yijin stuck out her tongue. "You didn't expect it, did you? One day, I'll have such a plan too. However, I think it's only right for someone like my dad." Indeed. It was enough to give someone like Yi Nanshan some face. Li Junxing held her hand tightly and kissed her on the lips. "The matter at home has been resolved. When will you consider my matter?" "What's the matter?" "Next month is my birthday. After my birthday, I will be 34 years old. I don't know when Chairman Yi plans to give me a title. Turn me straight. Or, is Chairman Yi willing to condescend to be the mayor's wife?" No sincerity. Yijin blinked and looked elsewhere. She didn't look at Li Junxing. "If I still agree to marry you after proposing like this, wouldn't I be letting you off too easily? Then tell me, what do I have to do for you to marry me?" Let me think. Even if he didn't propose 100 times, he could at least propose 8 or 10 times. If it moves me, I might agree to it. Yijin's raised eyebrows were full of smiles. "After all, I am young, beautiful, and rich. Uncle Li, do you have one? You civil servants are very poor. It's really a waste for me to marry you." Li Junxing almost laughed out loud. Looking at her serious expression, he pulled her body into his arms. Yes, it's us civil servants who are really poor. So, when I met a big sugar daddy like you, I have to hurry up and tie you down. I won't let you run away." Yijin couldn't help but laugh. She wrapped her arms around Li Junxing's neck. "Seeing that you are so pitiful, I'll reluctantly consider it." "Naughty." Li Junxing lowered his head to kiss her. As he kissed, he lost control. For a moment, the living room was extremely charming. Yijin did what she thought of. The next day, she went straight to Yi Nanshan. According to the agreement, if Yi Nanshan didn't appeal, then Yi Nanshan could only keep his 5% shares. However, if Yijin could, she really didn't want to face Yi Nanshan. "Dad, send Yi Jinhao to the orphanage." "Why?" He hadn't vented his anger yet. Yijin sighed in her heart. She really didn't understand why the person in front of her was her father. Don't you have any responsibility for how things have developed to this point? I don't want to say any more. Just based on your kick yesterday, I have every reason to call the police and say that you are a child abuser. But I don't want to do that. I believe that you are also willing to save some face for yourself. Homepage. Yi Nanshan was even angrier when he heard this. What face? The Yi family's face has long been lost because of you. Did I lose it, or did you lose it? Yijin didn't want to talk to him anymore. She handed the agreement she had drafted yesterday to Yi Nanshan. Buy Yi Jinhao's custody for 5% of the shares. Send him to the orphanage. Shares? Yi Nanshan sneered. The company's shares are mine to begin with. Moreover, you only left me 10%. Do you think I will agree? You can disagree. Yi Zhen stood up and realized that she really had nothing to say to Yi Nanshan. Her last trace of emotion was gone. From now on, she and Yi Nanshan would be strangers. Mr. Yi, you can agree to let Yi Jinhao go. After all, he is a child that you have raised for more than 10 years. You can also disagree and continue to take Yi Jinhao home and take revenge on him. That is your choice. You have already made too many mistakes in this life. I really hope that you won't make more mistakes. All the sins were caused by you. It was because of your greed. What right do you think you have to treat Yi Jinhao like this? The person who should be punished is you. That's all I have to say. You know what I have to say. After leaving the Yi family, Yijin breathed a sigh of relief. There were some problems, some things. She could only do her best. As for the outcome, it wasn't something she could guarantee. Yi Nanshan's character was so bad. It was up to him how he chose. She tried her best. She had a clear conscience. Yijin began to busy herself with work. The company was updated, and her relationship with Li Junsheng gradually stabilized. She was full and happy. Time passed by a week. She didn't know what Yi Nanshan thought, but he finally gave up custody of Yi Jinhao. Yi Jinhao was sent to the orphanage. Yijin breathed a sigh of relief. This was considered a result. In the end, Yi Nanshan didn't do as Yijin said and asked for the 10% shares. According to the previous agreement, he transferred all the shares under his name to Yijin. The process was so smooth that Yijin thought that Yi Nanshan was possessed. Yijin didn't care what Yi Nanshan thought. Anyway, she still left 5% of the shares for Yi Nanshan. Coupled with his previous assets, he wouldn't be living badly. In the blink of an eye, it was Christmas. Yijin didn't feel much about this kind of foreign festival in the past, but this year, she was with Li Junsheng. Li Junsheng happened to be on leave. Li Junsheng brought her back to Rong City. It took about 2 hours to get from Qing City to Rong City. When the car was still half an hour away from the Li family's residence, Yizhen was shocked by the street scene outside the window. The tall buildings on both sides were now all LED electronic screens. And the electronic screens were all projections of fireworks. They drove very slowly all the way. Yizhen looked at the LED screens and felt that they were especially beautiful. Wow, so beautiful. Is it beautiful? Li Junsheng asked someone to stop the car by the side of the road. He held her hand and got out of the car and walked to the river. This place was separated from the high-rise buildings across the river by a river. On the building across the river, the LED screen kept changing colors and shapes of fireworks. It's so beautiful. It wasn't that she hadn't seen this kind of light show before, but with so many high-rise buildings on the same screen, this was really the first time. But very quickly, the fireworks on the screen were replaced by blooming roses. After the roses bloomed, there was a huge diamond ring. She thought that it was an advertisement from a jewelry company and was engrossed in watching it. Unexpectedly, the diamond ring disappeared and turned into a string of words. Getting to know you is an accident. Falling in love with you is a surprise. Being with you is a blessing. Wanting to spend the rest of my life with you is my wish. Waking up every morning to see your sweet smile is my blessing. Words of love flashed across the screen one after another. Yi Zhen was stunned. Which jewelry company's advertisement? It was really too creative. It wasn't just her. Many people around her stopped and looked at the screens opposite. I will always love you, treat you well, and always keep you in my heart. The rest of my life is long, and I only want to be with you. Jinjin, I love you. Marry me. Jinjin, marry me. Yi Zhen was stunned for a moment. She turned around and found that Li Junsheng, who was standing beside her, had a bouquet of roses in his hand. He knelt down on one knee in front of her and handed the huge bouquet of roses in his hand to Yi Zhen. Jinjin, I love you. I want to marry you. Please marry me, okay? Yi Zhen covered her mouth. She couldn't believe that she would receive such a surprise. She felt her eyes moisten, and tears wanted to flow out uncontrollably. Uncle Li, believe me, I will always treat you well, always protect you, and always love you. Please marry me. At this time, there were already many people surrounding them. Everyone looked at the handsome man and beautiful woman in front of them, such an extremely eye-catching combination, and such a romantic proposal. The people around them all shouted together, marry him, marry him, marry him. Yi Zhen couldn't say anything and could only nod passively. She took it from Li Junsheng's hand. I promise you. Li Junsheng smiled. He took out a diamond ring from somewhere and put it on Yi Zhen's hand. He lowered his head and kissed her lips. There was a burst of applause around them. Li Junsheng had always kept a low profile. Such a high-profile proposal touched Yi Zhen. She hugged him tightly as he kissed her. Uncle Li, I love you too. I know. Uncle Li, yes? The rest of my life is long. Please advise me. Yes, the rest of my life is long. I'm willing to spend it with you. Compared to the hustle and bustle of the proposal, in the shadows of a bar on the other side of the river, a young man looked at the dozen or so people surrounding him with a mocking smile in his eyes. You sent so many people to deal with me? I'm really flattered. Cut the crap. Brothers, attack. The young man took off his coat and raised his almond-shaped eyes. His eyes were extremely sharp as he walked forward alone. His eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Chapter 8:15. Su Peijian walked out of the house, feeling a little annoyed. It had been a few months since she was released from prison. Her life was quite regular. At the company, at home. When she was in prison, Xiang Kaiping was still managing the company at her age. As she grew older, she gradually lost her ability. When she was young, she had a lot of chronic diseases. Even though she was the same age as Li Qianxue and Su Qinghui, she gave people the feeling that she was more than 10 years older. Every time she saw Xiang Caiping's old age, compared to Li Qianxue's young state, it always made people feel uncomfortable. That wasn't the reason why Su Peijian was annoyed. She was annoyed by Xiang Caiping's attitude. Every time Xiang Kaiping looked at her with guilty eyes, she felt great pressure. She never thought that there was anything wrong with her. After experiencing great ups and downs in life, she didn't care about some things anymore. In fact, if Xiang Kaiping wasn't here, she might have left Rome City. The world was so big, and with her ability, she could live anywhere. But Xiang Kaiping was here, and Xiang Kaiping felt guilty. She thought that she was the culprit who caused all the tragedy that Su Peijian had experienced, so she couldn't forgive herself. She used to be a little energetic, but since Su Peijian went to prison, she looked more and more experienced. Su Peijian didn't know how to comfort her. First, they hadn't been together since they were young. Second, her comfort didn't work. Some things could only be solved by oneself. She got into the car, and the night wind blew, bringing waves of cold. Rome City's climate was something she was used to living in the south, so she didn't like it. But those days in prison, there was nothing unbearable. Closing the car door, Su-Peision didn't know where to go. It was very lively on both sides, and there were many young couples. They were holding roses in their hands, or holding gifts. She suddenly remembered that today was Christmas. Today was originally her birthday. Today was the birthday on her ID card. But on this day, after more than 20 years, she realized that her birthday was never today, but tomorrow. She never changed the date. The car made a turn and headed for the bar. She wouldn't drink at home. Whenever she drank, Xiang Kaiping would worry again, which was also something she couldn't stand. Li Qinshue's management of children was indulgent. She believed in the children she taught. To a large extent, they have their own freedom. For example, she had never cared about Su Yusen's puppy love. When she was in school, she would travel alone, and Li Qianxue wouldn't interfere. However, Xiang Kaiping was different. She was always worried and afraid. It was as if he was treating her like a porcelain doll. Although it was familial love, Su-Peision felt a lot of pressure. Ever since she was released from prison, she realized that her heart seemed to have turned cold. She knew that Xiang Kaiping really cared about her and treated her well. However, she truly felt that Xiang Kaiping's concern was a burden. She was no longer a child. She did not need that kind of care. Especially the kind of concern that was mixed with guilt, self-blame, pity, and pity. Who was she? She was Su-Peision. She was once the eldest daughter of the Su family. The prideful her had always been high and mighty. Even if he was down and out, his pride was still in his bones. She did not need sympathy, did not need pity. Annoyed, she walked into the bar and ordered a margarita. She knew how much she could drink, and she always had a sense of propriety outside. She wouldn't get drunk. He couldn't get drunk either. He casually drank a few glasses. When she was slightly tipsy, she got up and left the bar. She parked her car in the alley behind the bar and took her bag to the place where she parked her car. The alley was dark, and Su-Peision was a little drunk again. As she walked forward, she was not paying attention and tripped over something in front of her. Seeing that she was about to fall, she held on to the wall beside her in time. After stabilizing herself, she finally saw clearly what had tripped her. A person. It should be a man. He was lying there motionless. Under the dim light and the man lying on his stomach, she could not see his face. However, it did not affect her movements. Perhaps it was because of the alcohol, or perhaps something else. She lifted her high-heeled foot and kicked the man's body. Move. The man who was kicked by her did not move. Su-Peision narrowed her eyes and raised her foot to kick him again. Get lost. A good dog doesn't block the way. She did not know where she kicked, but the man lying on his stomach let out a very short, muffled groan. Su-Peision knew that there were many bars in this area, and there were many drunkards. Normally, she wouldn't even spare a glance at someone who was drunk and lying on the road. The other party just lay there, blocking the way. However, the alley was narrow at this time, so she could either step over the man's body or wait for the man to get up. She impatiently wanted to kick him a third time, but unexpectedly, her ankle was grabbed by someone. Su-Peision wanted to pull her foot back, but the man grabbed her foot and pulled hard. She was wearing high-heeled shoes and was pulled off balance by him. She fell straight down. Even though she tried her best to control herself and reached out with both hands, she still fell on the man's body. Ugh! Her chin hit the man's head, and Su-Peision was in great pain. If she hadn't supported herself with both hands on the ground, she would have landed face first. However, this still caused her hand to rub, and it was a little hot. She was already drunk, and now that she hit the man, her anger rose. She had learned the invisibility spell, so without thinking, she raised her elbow and hit the man's chest. Ugh! This time, the muffled groan came from the man. At the same time, she quickly got up. Seeing the man, she raised her foot and kicked him again. This time, the kick landed on the man's chest. The muffled groan sounded again. Su Peijian didn't have the slightest sympathy. After seeing the man's body curl into a ball, she walked past him and was about to leave. Who knew that the person didn't seem to give up? He grabbed her ankle again, and this time, he used even more force. Su Peijian, who was prepared, held on to the wall to stabilize herself. She didn't fall, but she couldn't leave. At this time, the man's body had already turned around. There was a car passing by in the distance, and the light from the car shone in, and the man's face could be seen clearly at this moment. A face stained with blood, and a pair of narrow and spirited phoenix eyes. At this time, the man's hand was tightly holding his ankle. You want to run after kicking someone? The man's voice was obviously a little weak, and he spoke in a low voice. Su Peijian's reaction was to try to pull her foot back and kick the man again. The man seemed to have exhausted his strength. His hand holding her was already starting to loosen. Su Peijian was sure that if she kicked him again, the man would definitely faint. However, before she could kick him again, the man seemed to see through her. Tisk, black. What black? Su Peijian was stunned for a moment before she reacted. What did the man mean? She was wearing a woolen A-line skirt today. Because she came out of the heating room, and because she wanted to go back immediately, she didn't wear silk stockings. Damn this man. Su Peijian became more and more angry. Before the man's hand let go, she sat down like this without thinking. She sat straight on the man's chest. If she remembered correctly, when she used her elbow to hit the man's chest just now, he seemed to be in pain. Ugh! An even more tragic groan sounded. The hand holding her ankle loosened as expected. Su Peijian stood up. After she steadied herself, she looked at the man coldly. She turned around and left without looking back. The man on the ground was in extreme pain as he watched the woman's figure leave. There was only one thought in his mind: you're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.